In a bustling city, a young man find himself in a world he was suddenly transported to, one where the male-to-female ratio is 1:5. He has managed to adapt without any major issues, yet he still doesn't fully comprehend his situation. As he walks, a woman's hand suddenly grasps his arm from behind, a common occurrence in this world where women slightly outnumber men. He closes his eyes, a bead of sweat on his temple, reflecting that nearly everyone has at some point wished to be popular with the opposite sex. Just then, a sweet voice calls out to him. The voice belongs to a persistent woman clinging to his arm, asking why he won't have some tea with her. He looks away, annoyed, insisting that he's in a hurry and will be late. She refuses to give up, suggesting that he at least give her his contact information. He internally laments that he never wanted this kind of situation and decides to ignore her, just as another voice calls out his name, Masato. Before he can react, a girl with short, light hair named Kumi grabs his other arm, pulling him away from the woman. She smiles at him, reminding him that class is about to start and that they need to go, as she leads him away through the street. He glances back with a troubled expression, wondering if escaping like this is too rude. Behind them, the woman they left calls out for them to wait. Her face is twisted in fury. Seeing her expression, Masato is struck with fear, thinking how scary she looks and that he had already told her no. Now at a safe distance, Kumi tells him he can just ignore people like that. Masato laughs sheepishly, admitting that ignoring them is harder than it seems. She looks at him knowingly, stating that it's because he's too nice. He considers her words, thinking that it's not something one would normally say to a college guy. But in this world, she's probably right. Komi's expression turns serious as she adds that his niceness is precisely what makes him so worrisome. The truth of his situation becomes clear. He was transported to this world last month. At first, he didn't notice the difference because it was so similar to his own, but he soon discovered its extremely skewed generation. For every one man, there are 5 women. He reflects on the strange social dynamics of this world. He doesn't understand the exact reason for the difference, but the women here are overwhelmingly assertive. This has led to public debates about implementing polygamy to address the declining birth rate. This new reality was once a source of terror. When he first realized he had been transported to an unfamiliar place, he was honestly horrified. Mind drifts back to his old life, a life he had to give up. He remembers having friends, going to school, and laughing over silly things. It wasn't until he lost that normal, ordinary existence that he truly understood how precious it was. But even after being transported without any explanation, he found kindness. He met someone who became his guardian and made friends who helped him when he was in trouble. Turning to Kumi, he begins to speak. He tells her that thanks to the skewed gender ratio, even a beautiful girl like her pays attention to him, something that would have been impossible in his previous world. He muses that, in a way, he might be lucky. Kumi, noticing a strange mood, asks him what's wrong, as he concludes that while the world has changed, something else has too. But with a newfound resolve and a bright smile, he declares his intention to simply live a normal life in this world. Kumi watches him, a gentle smile on her own face. Scene shifts to 1 week prior. Kumi walks alone, reflecting on how simple-minded she had been, never realizing the truth of her surroundings. Her thoughts reveal she had overdone it playing First Fantasy online the previous night, annoyed by other players who only joined to be fawned over. Back in a moment, she wanders the school grounds, trying to remember where her first period class is. As she passes a table, she overhears 2 male students. One casually remarks that she's actually pretty cute, giving her a score of about 85 points. His friend questions if that means she just barely makes the cut. The first student continues, stating that if she asked him out, he might consider dating her. Hearing this, Kumi freezes, her leg trembling with barely suppressed rage as the sheer audacity of his words echoes in her mind. Her frustration finally boiled over, her thoughts racing as she clenched her fist, while men so arrogant. She recalled the words of the 2 male students from the previous week. They complained that women made no special effort and had nothing exceptional about them, yet still felt they had the right to choose. The same entitled phrases echoed in her memory. Be grateful. I'm even talking to you. And I guess I could date you if you want. The memory was interrupted as a young man bumped into her in the hallway. He apologized, asking if she was okay, and she mumbled that it was fine. Internally, however, she ceded, thinking the whole situation was just unacceptable. He then placed a hand on her head, casually asking if she had fallen in love at first sight, and offering to make her his girlfriend. The presumptuous gesture and words sent a shiver of disgust through her. Later, slumped over her desk in a classroom, she let out an exhausted sigh. The thought returned, a frustrated scream in her mind. Men are so... Her friend noticed her despondent state and approached, warning that she wouldn't make it to the 5th period if she kept this up. She tried to encourage Kumi, reminding her they had a push-through for the campus life they dreamed of. But Kumi felt defeated, muttering that she couldn't make it. With boundless energy, her friend struck a pose, trying to rally her spirits by declaring they had to go catch a handsome guy. Kumi, however, remained completely unmoved. She found the entire notion unacceptable. She knew it wasn't normal to think this way. But in a world where men were rare and valuable, they were the ones in a position to choose. She couldn't stand their sharp, scrutinizing gazes. Her friend, undeterred, asked who she was aiming for in the badminton club. Kumi replied that she didn't have anyone in mind. Surprised, her friend pressed, asking about Kido-san, whom she considered handsome. Kumi looked away, clarifying that it wasn't about a specific person. With quiet finality, she stated, "I don't want a boyfriend." She found herself lost in thought, tired of always being in the position to be chosen. She quietly wondered if a man who was kind, had a clean appearance, and treated women as equals even existed. Her friend, however, found this amusing, remarking that for someone so cute, Kumi was surprisingly not very aggressive. Kumi stared back, feeling that finding such an ideal partner was a luxury, like something from fairy tale. She continued her friendly lecture, grabbing Kumi's arm and warning her that if she didn't actively go after man, she would end up single. Sitting in the crowded lecture hall, Kumi quietly conceded that it was probably true. After class, her friend waved a cheerful goodbye. Kumi's thoughts lingered on the warning. A girl like her, who makes no effort to be chosen, would surely meet that fate. Let out a heavy sigh while looking at her phone. Nearby, the sight of a couple embracing only seemed to deepen her sense of isolation. A notification then informed her that the next lecture was cancelled. Suddenly alone with unexpected free time, she felt adrift, with no idea which class to take or what to do with herself. Gaze then fell upon a lone figure sitting on a ledge, Masato. He looked utterly dejected, his laptop resting on his knees as he muttered that it was over. Seeing his troubled expression, Kumi noticed they were the only 2 people in the area. She hesitated, imagining a different scenario where someone would surely help him out. He seemed the type who could easily get assistance with retaking courses, perhaps even attracting romantic interest. The thought of people repaying kindness with ingratitude, however, gave her a subtle feeling of stress. But looking at his genuinely furrowed brows, she felt a pang of guilt. Leaving him alone when he was so clearly distressed felt wrong. And besides, she realized there was something else. She couldn't quite place it, but she sensed something about him that felt different from the others. She found herself analyzing him. He wasn't handsome in a conventional celebrity-like way, but there was something else, an inner light that seemed to shine from him. She tried to temper her expectations, telling herself it was only a little curiosity, nothing more. Steeling herself, she walked over to the bench where he sat. "Are you by any chance trying to register for courses?" she asked. He looked up, confirming that he was. A bright, genuine smile spread across his face, expressing his relief that his enrollment process wouldn't be delayed for certain. The natural ease of his expression caught her completely off guard. She wondered if men could always smile so effortlessly. Luster by a smile, she stammered out an offer. If you'd like, I can help you out." The moment the words left her mouth, she was mortified, convinced she must have sounded strange and creepy. He was probably put off. But his reaction was the opposite of what she expected. His eyes widened with delight as he exclaimed, "Is that okay? That would really help me out." His pure, unadulterated joy left her momentarily speechless. Immediately gathered his things and moved to sit beside her on the bench. She was stunned that he wasn't put off at all, captivated again by his pure smile. But as he settled next to her, a wave of panic washed over her. She worried she had completely misread the situation and was about to make a fool of herself on the verge of tears in public. Trying to regain her composure, she noted that they were in the same department and faculty. "Really? It's such a huge help to be assisted by a direct senior," she said with a small smile. He looked at her a little blankly. "Ah," he began. "Oh, sorry, I'm a freshman too." Her world came crashing down. It was over. You must think she had ulterior motives that she was too bold for offering help. She had only thought his smile was cute, but now he would surely think she was conceited and mock her for it. He, however, seemed completely unaware of her internal crisis. Beaming, he explained that she was a huge help as he didn't have any friends in his year yet. With a warm, open expression, he introduced himself. "I'm Kadasado Masato, and you." His friendly smile sent a jolt through Kumi. Her knee trembled as she tried to process his demeanor. He was kind, approachable, different. She desperately told herself to calm down, to compose herself. She resolved not to cause any more embarrassment. She had to put on a smile. Taking a breath, she introduced herself, Igarashi Kumi. With that resolve, a bright, blushing smile spread across her face, her eyes wide and shimmering. Her expression bright, she formally completed her introduction, telling him it was nice to meet him. He responded with a cheerful grin, acknowledging her name. Igarashi-san got it, he confirmed. Internally, Komi was in a panic, wondering if her smile had looked natural. Her eyes then fell upon his course schedule, noticing it was completely blank. The side of the empty timetable sparked an idea. This was an opportunity. She realized that since they were in the same department and faculty, it would be perfectly logical for them to take all the same classes. They could be together every day. Gathering her courage, she fidgeted with her hands and shyly suggested that they could have the same schedule if you would like. The moment the words left her mouth, a wave of panic washed over her. She thought it was over, that her rapid, rambling offer was creepy. She imagined him thinking that having to see her every day would be a form of torture. But his reaction was not what she expected. He leaned in slightly and asked if she was a senpai, an upperclassman. Kumi was stunned, wondering why he wasn't suspicious or laughing at her. When he pointed out there was no benefit for her, she quickly insisted it was fine. He then asked to see her schedule, and she readily agreed. With her schedule copied, he beamed, thanking her profusely for all the help. As they began to walk in opposite directions, he explained that he was heading home since his student ID hadn't arrived yet, making class attendance pointless for now. He noticed her staring and, slightly flustered, asked what was wrong. Kumi simply smiled and said she would see him in class once he started attending. Internally, she celebrated the fact that she would now get to see him every day, realizing this was the most fun she had ever had talking to a boy. As she turned to leave, he called out to her, addressing her as Igarashi-san. He hesitated for a moment before saying he had a favor to ask. He looked at her earnestly, a hopeful smile on his face, and asked if she would be his friend, provided it was all right with her. Her eyes widened in surprise, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks as she processed his unexpected request. Mind raced. He wanted to be her friend. She mused that she could even date him if he wanted. The choice had always been the man's, and he should be grateful she was even talking to him. To be the one chosen, the idea was a novel one. In that moment, a new resolve sparkled in her eyes. As she clasped her hands together and replied with his sweet, "Of course," Masato let out a sigh of pure relief, smiling brightly as he thanked her. He confessed that he didn't have a single friend. She bid him farewell for the moment, adding that thanks to him, she was now starting to look forward to university. At the moment he was out of sight, her cheerful facade crumbled. She clenched her fist, her body trembling as she collapsed her knees, overwhelmed. She couldn't hold it any longer. Her thoughts became a frantic, breathless chant of his name. Masato Koen. What was his feeling? He was like a prince, exactly what she had imagined, from his appearance to his vibe. A powerful, overwhelming desire washed over her. She wanted him. All of him. She rests her chin on her hands, a deep blush coloring her cheeks as she dreamily whispers his name. Masato Koen. The moment passes and she straightens up, her backpack slung over her shoulder. They walk together. Her pleasant demeanor masks a simmering frustration. She glances at Masato, thinking to herself how oblivious he is. She feels a surge of possessiveness, convinced that if she doesn't keep a constant watch over him, other girls will immediately try to claim it. He notices her troubled expression and turns to her asking what's wrong. She quickly dismisses it as nothing, though she privately concedes that this very obliviousness is one of Masato's endearing qualities. A moment later, Masato stops and makes a simple request, asking her to hold out her hand for a second. Komi looks at him, puzzled, but complies. Into her open palm, he places a few small snacks. He explains it's just a little something to thank her for her help, his face breaking into a wide, sincere smile. His simple act of kindness, coupled with his radiant smile, strikes her with unexpected force. Her cheeks flush as she thinks to herself that his charm is unfair. When he asks what's wrong, she quickly brushes it off and tells him to get going. As they part ways, she can't shake the thought of how effortlessly he affects her. Meanwhile, in another place, a young woman with long dark hair reflects on a similar kind of person. She recalls how this individual does things for her that one would expect from a significant other. In moments like these, she is surprised by acts of kindness that, for some reason, make her angry. This kindness is a double-edged sword for her. She admits that it saves her, yet it remains a source of difficulty. Clutching a pass of some kind, she looks ahead with determination, vowing that one day, things will be different. Back in the present, Kumi's own resolve hardens as she watches Masato's retreating form. The earlier blush is replaced by a look of unwavering, intense determination. A straightforward and powerful feeling solidifies within her. She will, without a doubt, become his girlfriend. Masato gets dressed, checking his phone as he considers his new reality. It has already been a month since he first came to this parallel world. From outside, a woman's voice calls his name, reminding him that it's almost noon. He shouts back that he knows and is on his way. He reflects on the fact that in this world, a version of himself named Konosato Masato already existed. A young man who had just graduated from high school and was preparing for college. As he slips on his shoes at the doorway, he recalls his initial unease after reincarnating. Now, however, he lives a relatively normal life, all thanks to a certain person waiting for him just outside. The woman, Tatiana Masan, greets him with a simple morning. She reminds him that he has a shift at the shop at 6 p.m. Masato considers her as goddess. She was the one who helped him right after he arrived, and he owes his current stability to her. She notes that he's been showering before work lately, commenting that while hygiene is good, he doesn't need to go to such lengths. Masato explains that he just exercises to get sweaty until it's time for his shift. Sakuya Masand then casually mentions that she's married, but she and her husband are no longer together. She then asks how things are going at college, and if he has made any friends yet. Masato gives a hesitant, non-committal answer, which immediately makes her suspicious. Demeanor shifts instantly, leaning in close. She sternly warns him not to be tricked by any strange girls, to let her know if he plans on staying out overnight, and to drop the formal honorifics when speaking with her. He pulls back, thinking to himself that to the people of this world, he must seem like a reckless girl from his original one. He announces that he's leaving, and Tsukumi-san calls after him, pointing out that he still used the honorific. He arrives at a large, crowded university lecture hall. From across the room, a bright voice calls out, "Misato." It's Kumi, waving enthusiastically from her seat. He makes his way to a desk. As she greets him, he thanks her for saving him a seat. She tells him it's a matter of course, and he feels a wave of gratitude, thankful that she is his friend. Leaning close, Kumi whispers a suggestion to have a meal together as thanks for saving her seat. Masato, completely caught off guard by her proximity and proposal, can only stammer in confusion as she beams at it. He flinches as she leans against him, his mind racing. He internally questions what this cute creature is, and if this means she likes him, feeling himself about to revert to his old awkward ways. Composing himself, he apologizes, explaining that he has a work shift that he faced. Trying to salvage the opportunity, he suggests the following Monday instead. Kumi notes that he also had a shift last week and asks if they're always on Fridays. He confirms it might be the case, and she seems to accept this as he affirms that Monday works for him. Her face lights up with a jubilant yay. She clenches her fists in excitement, telling him she's looking forward to it. Masato is once again flustered by her overt cuteness, trying to get a grip on himself as he feels her legs slide against it. His gaze drifts as he reflects on her. She's cute, caring, and popular with everyone. She even helped him with course registration. He muses that in his original world, he never would have been able to get close to someone like her. He admits he doesn't know much about her friendships, but assumes her friends want to take classes with her. These thoughts prompted him to turn to her and ask if this arrangement is truly okay. Kumi looks back at him, a hint of guilt in her expression as she admits to herself that she feels a little bad for keeping him all to herself. He clarifies his concern, asking if she wouldn't rather take classes with her friends instead of him. Kumi falls silent, her expression turning thoughtful as she considers his question. She dismisses his worry, assuring him that it's not true. She explains that she can see her friends at her club or elsewhere, and advises him to take classes with his own friends as well. Masato replies that he's fine on his own, having already caught up with the class material. His answer seems to strike a chord. Kumi leans forward on her desk, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable as she looks directly at him and asks a single pointed question: why? Her simple question throws him completely off balance. He wonders if he said something strange. He can see that Kumi is smiling, but for some reason, it doesn't bring comfort. A chill runs down his spine as he asks himself why her smile suddenly feels so scary. Scene shifts to a time before Masato arrived. Kumi stepped into the lecture hall, her eyes scanning, the tiered seating. She quickly realized he wasn't there yet. She took a seat, placing her bag on the chair beside her. It couldn't be helped, she thought. She would just have to save him a spot. Out her phone. She typed a quick message to let him know. As her thumb hovered over the screen, she hesitated, wondering if adding a heart emoji would make him cringe. She knew as that he definitely wouldn't mind. It had been a month since she'd been with Masato, and his kindness was almost a source of anxiety. He was so nice, never putting up a guard around girls, which was precisely how she managed to get close to him. But that same openness made her worry. Her worry intensified as she imagined some terrible woman taking advantage of his nature. Her hand tightened on her shorts, a fierce resolve forming in her mind. She had to protect him. This resolve hardened into a plan. She would stay by her side as much as possible throughout their time in college. And then one day, thought led to a vivid daydream. In it, Masato thanked her for everything, and she held him close. The desire to protect him even beyond college surfaced, though she quickly brushed it aside with a playful, "just kidding." A buzz from her phone pulled her from a reverie. It was a reply from Masato, a simple thank you, accompanied by a charmingly drawn cat. A blush crept on her cheeks as she thought how cute it was. His reply only strengthened her conviction. She clenched her fist, her expression firming with renewed purpose. She would absolutely protect it. Just then the lecture hall door opened, and Masato walked in. As he approached her, true thoughts surfaced sharp and clear. They hadn't spent nearly enough time together. It was time for things to progress. She was resolved. She absolutely wanted Masato to be her boyfriend. She knew she couldn't afford to mess this up. A direct confession was too risky unless she was absolutely certain he wouldn't reject her. Therefore, she had to take this step by step, planning her next move with extreme care. Mind seized on an idea, a one-on-one outing, a chance to see Masato outside of school, a date. The thought alone was thrilling. The time they had in class simply wasn't enough. She needed to learn more about him, what he liked, his hobbies, his favorite foods. As she was lost in thought, he turned and called out to her. A blush warmed her face as she realized this was the perfect opportunity. She could use this situation to her advantage to learn everything she wanted to know about Masato. She leaned in closer, suggesting they have a meal together as a thank you for saving her seat. As she spoke, she fidgeted, wondering if she was being too bold, but she quickly decided it was necessary. If she didn't make a move like this, he might never notice her at all. He told her he couldn't that night, as he had to work shift, but proposed the following Monday instead. Her face lit up with pure joy as she enthusiastically agreed that Monday would be perfect. Happiness was almost overwhelming as she tapped her foot in excitement. Her mind raced with plans for their date, making a dinner reservation, deciding if they should go shopping or to karaoke. She considered just asking him directly what he'd like to do, but her thoughts were cut short when he called out to her again. He looked at her with genuine concern, asking if this arrangement was really okay with her. He wondered aloud if she wouldn't rather be taking classes with her friends instead. The question caught her completely by surprise. Surprise shifted to a focused intensity. That wasn't true at all. She couldn't comprehend why he would even suggest such a thing. Leaning forward, she assured him she was fine on her own and had caught up with her studies, then asked him directly if he didn't want to be with her. He quickly clarified that wasn't it at all, confessing that he wanted to be with her. He explained that he could see his other friends at clubs, but felt they didn't get enough time together. Still, he encouraged her to make sure she attended classes with her friends too. Words stunned her into silence. Overwhelmed, she leaned forward and pressed her face against the shoulder, quietly asking why. Caught completely off guard by her sudden closeness and the question, Masato could only stammer in shock. Words echoed in Kumi's mind, fueling her insecurities. She worried that he might secretly want to take classes with some other cuter girl, and that someone like her would only be disliked. She imagined him asking if she hated their classes, a thought she internally rejected. No, that wasn't it at all. She just wanted to be with him, to keep him from drifting beyond her reach. Her internal panic burst forth as she clung to him, pleading for him not to push her away. Realizing what she'd said, she immediately grew flustered, stammering that it was nothing that she meant nothing by. To calm her, Masato spoke with earnest gratitude. He explained that he was truly happy that a beautiful girl like her would take classes with him, adding that she was his only friend. The compliment caught Kumi completely off guard, her mind snagging on his choice of words. Smiled gently, confirming her unspoken question. He told her that, of course, she was cute, and that he wished she had more confidence in herself. The directness of his praise left Kumi flustered, questioning if he truly saw her that way. The compliment struck her with a force of physical blow. Her face flushed a deep red as his voice, calling her cute, reverberated in her thoughts. She cupped her burning cheeks, a giddy, irrepressible smile spreading across her face. The thought was pure bliss. Hearing those words from the person she liked made her happier than anything. She let out a series of happy, love-struck giggles, leaving up a Willed or Misato to simply watch, a question mark practically hanging over his head. As they parted ways after class, Misato gave a casual, "See you," but for Kumi, the warm feeling lingered. Her thoughts were still consumed by Misato's words, when a cheerful voice called her name. A girl with dark pigtails suddenly latched onto her from behind, startling her out of her daze. Her friend Mizuo peered closely at her face, a teasing glint in her eye. She pointed out Komi's obvious love-struck expression, prompting a flustered denial from the still blushing Komi. She blushes, flustered, as Mizuo continues to tease her about making a maiden's face. Kumi begs her to stop, but then quietly admits that perhaps she was. Seizing the opportunity, Mizuo leans in closer, demanding to know when she'll be introduced to the hati Kumi is always within class. The question catches Kumi completely off guard. Mizuo reminds her of their promise to share information about guys. She recalls how Komi claimed she couldn't be in class together, only to end up sitting next to an attractive boy and acting all sweet, leaving Komi at a loss for words. She finishes her argument with a pout, declaring that as someone who also appreciates attractive men, she feels left out and sad. In response, Komi bows deeply in a gesture of sincere apology, but firmly states that she cannot introduce him. Friend is taken aback, demanding to know why. Komi looks up, her expression uncharacteristically serious, and insists that she means it. The name Masato echoes in her mind. An image of Masato fills her thoughts as she makes a silent, possessive vow. She won't give them up to anyone. Now back in the present, Mizuo lets out an exasperated sigh, finding it unbelievable that Komi would be so formal and unyielding with her best friend. She changes her approach, leaning in with a new proposition. If Kumi won't introduce her to Masato, then she must tell her about other attractive guys instead. Relieved, Kumi agrees to do her best. Mizuo rests her head on her friend's shoulder, the tension broken. Kumi offers a final apology and a word of thanks. She finds herself in Mizuo's playful grasp, who declares that she'll be the one to get a boyfriend first. Kumi protests the sudden intimacy, telling her to wait and not touch her in strange places, while Mizuo's expression remains determined. Initial protest melts away, replaced by confident, knowing smirk. Seeing this change, Mizuo smiles back, encouraging her friend to give it her all. As she considers this, Komi reflects on her feelings. She knows that ever since falling in love with Masato, every day has been fun and the entire world around her seems to sparkle. But a shadow falls over these bright thoughts. Whenever other girls get close to Masato, or when he even mentions hanging out with them, a dark feeling envelops her. A quiet, desperate question forms in her mind. Isn't she enough? The truth of her feelings crystallizes in a single stark admission to herself as she imagines covering his eyes from behind. She is someone who gets jealous easily. Later, on a basketball court, Masato watches Kumi and Mizuo depart. He briefly wonders what their interaction was about, but dismisses it, noting that Kumi seemed happy. As he stands with his basketball, a young woman with short dark hair approaches from behind, calling out his name. She addresses him as older brother, her eyes fixed on the departing girls. She observes that there's another girl with him now, and then poses a pointed question. Would he dislike it if she were to hang out with another boy? A lone basketball hangs in the air, suspended for a moment against a vast cloudy sky. The ball lands on an outdoor court where Masato finds a moment of peace. He reflects that this is his routine after Friday classes, a quiet spot to unwind before his part-time job begins, precisely because it's never crowded on weekdays. His thoughts drift to a past conversation. He recalls someone lamenting that while they like sports, they can't play casually in this world because it's so dominated by women. Kumi's voice echoes in his memory, advising against joining her club for serious exercise as it's too laid back, leaving the person to conclude that they can only exercise alone. As he stands on the court, a bead of sweat tracing his jaw, a voice suddenly calls out, "Oh, only I sand." His solitude is broken. He realizes he is not alone anymore. Before him stands a young girl in sportswear, holding a basketball with a look of pure determination. She announces that today, she will win, and when she does, he must give her the court. Looking down at her, Masato teasingly calls her a little girl, but she quickly retorts that she is not. Remembers how this all started. This court was a place he'd found to play freely, but his routine was interrupted when this girl, Yuka, first appeared. He'd met her not long after arriving in this world, and now she's a middle schooler. The first time they met, he simply offered her the spot and turned to leave, but she just stood there crestfallen. Since then, their relationship has evolved. What began as a simple concession transformed into a recurring basketball match with a winner earning ownership of the court for the day. He pictures her pointing at him, earnestly demanding a match. Shaq in the present, Misato dribbles the ball, his expression serious. He knows that for now, the only real advantage he holds over her is their difference in height. He understands this advantage is temporary. The girl is incredibly skilled, and he's certain that once she grows and develops physically, he will definitely lose. Yuka, meanwhile, dribbles with a confident smile, thinking to herself that today, she has a secret strategy. The game begins. Yuka executes a sharp crossover dribble, catching Misato by surprise. He recognizes the move, but she's already driving past him toward the basket. She looks up at him, a confident glint in her eye, declaring that this level of play is exactly what she'd expect from him. Misato smirks, retorting that he's sorry, but he has seen that particular move before. Despite his confidence, she explodes past him, dribbling low and fast. He scrambles to keep up, staying right on her heels as she drives toward the basket. Pivots sharply, recognizing her maneuver as a roll. As she spins, her own determination is clear. She is certain she has this. In an instant, however, the ball is slapped away from her hand. She lets out a small gasp of surprise, her eyes wide as she loses her footing. She falls to the pavement with a soft cry of pain. Misato looks down, relieved that he managed to stop her in time, and asks if she is okay. He immediately grows flustered, realizing how awkward the situation looks with her on the ground in front of him. He thinks to himself that this isn't good and that he needs to get her moved. Before he can say anything, she suddenly lunges forward, burying her face in his chest. The unexpected action leaves him completely stunned and confused. She pulls back just as quickly, her own face flushed with embarrassment. Her mind spins as she realizes this is the first proper interaction she's ever had with him. Her thoughts flashed back to 1 month ago. She was walking with her friends, Kumi and Rika, when Rika excitedly announced that she had confessed to a boy named Shoya at the graduation ceremony, and he'd said yes. Kumi was overjoyed for her. The conversation then turned to Yuka. Her friends asked if she had confessed to anyone, but she replied that she didn't have anyone she liked. In the present, the memory seems to cause her a flicker of confusion. She stood with her friends in gym class, the conversation turning to the boys. One friend pointed out that a boy named Mieta was wearing a bra, while another dismissed all the boys in their class as being just kids. The discussion shifted to how playing basketball supposedly makes girls taller, a sensitive subject for Yuka. She overheard some boys commenting on her height. One remarked that no one likes tall girls, while another crudely asked if she was the right size. Her friends tried to console her, but the constant teasing about her height, a trait she couldn't control, made her question if she was the strange one for simply being herself. She found solace clutching a basketball, thinking to herself that playing was far more fun than paying attention to the boys in her class. She found none of them attractive. Her friend noticed her focus, playfully calling her a basketball fanatic. Memory of that day faded. Returning to a more recent conversation, Yuka lamented that she wished she'd won more games, explaining she just wanted to play basketball. Her light-haired friend laughed, admitting she only joined the team to get close to boys. Her other friend then interjected with a smirk, declaring that Yuka was secretly a pervert anyway. The accusation hit her with shocking force. Her face flushed red as she stammered, completely taken aback by the sudden teasing. Her dark-haired friend pressed on, claiming everyone knew Yuka grinned while reading dirty books in class. Flustered, Yuka insisted that it wasn't true, as her other friends started to add to the story. Mentioning a time, she visited Yuka's house and found something suspicious under her bed. Yuka lunged forward. She clamped a hand over her friend's mouth, shouting for her to stop. Overwhelmed, she tried to defend herself, thinking that she couldn't help it. She was a girl, after all. Of course, she had some interest in men, her mind conjuring images of idealized handsome figures. Her friends continued their teasing as they walked away, chanting about secretly pervy Yuka. She yelled for them to stop, insisting she was normal. She clarified that she just wasn't good with the boys in their class, but if there was someone she thought was cool, she would definitely be interested, after they had gone. She walked alone, the teasing still fresh in her mind. Suddenly, the distinct rhythmic bounce of a basketball cut through the air. She stopped and looked up, her attention immediately captured. She follows the sound to a fenced-in court, observing a lone figure practicing. It's rare to see anyone here at this hour. She muses, but if it's just two of them, they could probably take turns. Seeking through the chain-link fence, she realizes it's a boy. He stands for a moment, breathing steadily as he spins the basketball in his hands. Suddenly, he explodes into motion. The sheer speed of his dribble catches her completely off guard. her eyes widening in surprise. As she watches a move, she's captivated. She has only ever seen such skillful play in videos. This is the first time she's witnessed a boy play so amazingly in person. He leaps and tosses the ball towards a hoop in a graceful arc. She can only stare, completely mesmerized by the sight. After a shot, he turns, wiping sweat from his brow, and their eyes meet. Her heart begins to pound as she realizes how handsome he is. Noticing her, he offers a kind smile and tells her he's heading back, so she's free to use the cord. Kindness only flusters her more. A sudden panic sets in as he begins to leave. If they part ways now, she might never see him again. She wonders if this encounter was the reason she came to the court in the first place. She pauses, looking back at her expectantly, gathering all her courage. She gives herself a silent command. "Be brave, Yuka Maeta." She manages to stammer out a hesitant, Mind races with things she wants to say. She could ask him to play basketball, ask for his contact information, or just tell him he was cool. But she immediately dismisses each idea, convinced they would sound desperate and creepy to someone she just met. He asks if something is the matter. Defeated, she looks down and murmurs that it's nothing, accepting her answer. He says he's heading home then, leaving her alone by the court. She berated herself for her foolishness, but then a new resolve hardened in her eyes. She is Maeda Yuka, a girl who never gives up. Her determination carried her through the school day. She resolved to meet the boy. Oni-san, as she thought of him again, as she walked, a friend grabbed her from behind, reminding her that it was the day for club orientation. Yuka immediately declared she was joining the basketball team, leaving her friends behind, utterly bewildered by her sudden change in behavior. She returned to the court, waiting anxiously. The distant rhythmic sound of a bouncing basketball echoed through the air. Her head snapped up. It was him. He was here. A wave of relief washed over her. He hadn't been there on her previous visits, and she had started to worry she might never see him again. He moved with grace, his shooting form just as beautiful as she remembered. To her, he was just as cool as the first time she laid eyes on him. Watching him play, she took a hesitant step forward, her hand tightening on the chain-link gate. The sound of the gate caught his attention. He turned a look of recognition on his face as he realized she was the girl from before. Yuka froze, startled by the direct eye contact. Mind raced. He remembered her, even from that brief moment. Her face felt like it was on fire, but she knew she had to say something. She couldn't bear the thought of losing this chance and never seeing him again. Steeling herself, she pointed a finger directly at him and blurted out a challenge, asking him for a match. The boy looked down at her, completely taken aback by the sudden request. Surprise gave way to a simple agreement. As he said, "Sure," Yuka's bravado instantly evaporated into a frantic internal panic. She worried she was coming off as a complete weirdo, silently pleading for him not to be scared or report her. Unaware of her turmoil, he simply added that he was looking for someone to play against anyway. The young man accepted her challenge with a confident smile, dribbling the basketball low to the ground. He warned her, however, that he had no intention of going easy on her. He tossed the ball towards her, telling her she could go first. As she watched it spin through the air, her heart fluttered. She couldn't believe she was really playing basketball with him, thinking to herself how kind he was. The game began, and any trace of her earlier nervousness vanished, replaced by pure exhilaration. They moved across the court, and with every dribble and attempted shot, she felt an overwhelming sense of joy. This was more fun than she could have imagined. When the match ended, Yuka was left panting, completely exhausted. Her friend watched from the side, impressed, as Yuka admitted she couldn't beat him. The young man approached, asking if she was all right. She marveled at his skill, realizing she'd never lost to a boy her age before, which made his talent even more amazing. He simply grinned, noting she was out of breath and reminding her to stay hydrated. His question prompted her to check her bag, but she came up empty. She admitted that she must have forgotten to bring a drink. Without hesitation, he offered her his own. Tried to refuse, saying she had money to buy one from a vending machine, but he insisted she take his. As he handed her the plastic bottle, she saw that the cap had already been unscrewed. It was already opened. The realization hit her instantly. His lips had touched that bottle. A deep blush spread across her face as the thought screamed through her mind. An indirect kiss. Panic set in. If he noticed her hesitation and figured out why, he would be totally creeped out and might never want to see her again. Her mind raced with anxiety, but her body's intense thirst fought back against her embarrassment. She wanted to drink it. She absolutely desperately wanted to drink it. Steeling her nerves, she decided to just act natural. Completely natural. As she lifted the bottle to her lips, her thoughts drifted to the idea of what this meant. A kiss with him. She took a long swallow, just as his voice cut through her reverie, calling her name. Yuka-chan. The sound made her heart leap. She thought about how seductive he was, recalling the sight of him during their game. The sweat on his skin, his flushed cheeks, the precise control of his hands on the ball. He had been this captivating since the moment they first met. Her mind replayed every detail about him. She had failed to go through with the indirect kiss before, but that was fine. Today, she had gone to sit on his stomach. His slightly exposed skin, his smooth legs, everything about him was alluring to her. Her reverie is shattered when he asks if she's awake and feeling okay. With a startled cry, Yuka realizes the truth of her situation. She has somehow ended up right on top of it. She scrambles up, insisting she's fine, though her mind is racing with embarrassment. She passed out again. He must think she's a weirdo. Apologizing for the trouble, she listens as he points out how late it's gotten and suggests they head home for the day. She meekly agrees. As her frustration mounts, she thinks to herself that this is the worst possible outcome. She finally got to spend time with him and ruined it. Seeing her clenched fist, he gently places his hand over hers, telling her not to worry. He then leans in close, his face just inches from hers, and promises that he'll be back next week. Yuka freezes, her cheeks flushing at his sudden proximity. A warm smile. He asked her to take the spot back for him. The closeness is overwhelming for Yuka, whose heart pounds as she realizes just how near he is. Stepping back, he points toward her and offers to lend her a towel to wipe her sweat. He places it on the bench and quickly adds that it's freshly washed and that he has a separate one for himself. Eyes widen as she stares at the folded cloth. It's his towel. Any thought that things hadn't gone perfectly vanishes, replaced by the frantic beating of her heart. He continues telling her to have confidence. He praises her speed, saying that a single defender wouldn't have been able to stop a roll. With a bright, encouraging smile, he adds that it's fun for him too because she's getting better. With a final wave and a promise to see her next week, he turns and walks away. Yuka remains on the bench, watching him go, her mind reeling from the whirlwind of events. She sat alone on a bench, replaying their conversation in her mind. He always knew exactly what to say, the perfect words she wanted to hear. As she brought the towel he'd given her to her face, inhaling his scent, she fully acknowledged the truth of her feelings. Ever since they met, she had realized how wonderful it was to like someone. Her heart was completely captivated by him, but a conflicting thought arose. For someone like her to feel this way about such a kind and amazing person felt wrong. The overwhelming rush of emotion left her breathless, her face buried deep in the fabric of his towel as her cheeks flushed. Tears began to stream down her face, a wave of guilt washing over her. "I'm sorry, Oni-Isen," she thought, her shoulders trembling with silent sobs. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit establishment, a woman with her hair tied back approached Masato, telling him she had a request. Across the room, the basketball player stood near the blonde woman, who was lounging on a sofa as a voice declared that Yuka was a bad girl. Masato simply replied, "Got it." He then moved toward a table where Yuka sat with her head down, hiding her face in shame. Kneeling beside her, he offered a simple greeting. "Good evening." "Woman Saipa, watch them go." Masato glanced back, remarking that she had come back again. A look of resignation crossed Saipa's face, as she thought to herself that now he was off to yet another woman. The evening buzzes outside a brightly lit establishment, its sign reading Festa. The shadows of patrons stretch across the building's facade as they enter. Inside, the atmosphere is lively. A group of women shower a companion with praise, exclaiming how amazing and cool she is. Nearby, a young man in a suit, Masato, observes the scene while on duty. The group laughing together around a table, a bottle of champagne ready to be served. He quietly affirms the situation to himself. A drink, Masato internally reflects on his new reality. He finds it painful to see his always kind senpai acting so carefree. The condition for covering his living expenses was this job, working at the Americans' boys' bar, Festa. He admits to himself that he just can't get used to it. The flirty atmosphere of the bar is particularly difficult for him. He concedes that the job isn't hard and the people are nice, but the blatant way everyone tries to flatter each other is something he finds impossible to adjust to. A female customer turns her attention down. She points out that since he's underage and can't drink with the others, he might as well have a drink with her. People likely refuses, stating he can't drink. Unfazed, the woman leans in closer, questioning if he prefers younger men instead. With a strained expression, Masato addresses her as Milady. He manages to extricate himself from the situation, thinking it was a close call. His primary concern is Kazuto's happiness. His job requires only two things: to fake a smile and listen. Because of this, he rarely gets specific requests. Just then, a light-haired colleague calls out, "Masato," informing him of a request at table 3 from the usual customer. Masato reacts with surprise. She walks toward the designated table, parting a curtain to reveal a woman with long dark hair, sitting alone. As he approaches, she looks up and offers a simple good evening. Recognizing her instantly, he addresses her as Seira. A faint blush appears on his cheeks as he notes that she came again, just as she had the previous week. She smiles gently, explaining that she just happened to have some free time. Seira takes a sip from her glass as Masato watches. He reflects on the irony of working in a place where everyone comes to drink while he cannot. It must be difficult for her as well, dealing with customers. He considers her an odd one, always requesting someone as plain as it. She turns to him, flustered, insisting that she doesn't care about drinking. With great conviction, she declares that he is the perfect match for her and that he should be grateful. He responds with a gentle, knowing smile, conceding that she might be right. He thanks her sincerely, agreeing that she is the perfect match for him, which earns a small, embarrassed laugh from her. His thoughts drift to another time, when two of Seira's friends were present. One of them had bluntly told him that Seira was head over heels for him, and that he should give her some attention. A flustered Seira had tried to downplay it, claiming she only came because her senpai had invited her. He concludes his recollection by thinking that while Seira can be hard to read, she is a kind person. Back in the present, she points a finger at him, declaring that she only called for him because talking to him was the least bad option available. Unfazed, he simply smiles and tells her that he's happy even so. He picks up a bottle, offering to pour her a drink. He admits that listening is pretty much all he can do, but that he genuinely likes hearing her stories. Surprised, she asks if he says that to everyone, which he quickly denies. As he holds out the freshly poured glass, he adds that she's the only person odd enough to specifically request someone like him. She takes a drink, a smile spreading across her face as she concedes that she probably is the only one who would request a host who doesn't even drink. Masato replies that it's fine then, causing her to look away with a deep blush. Watching her, a warm expression on his face, he thinks to himself how nice it is to see her enjoying herself. His thoughts deepen as he recalls the first time she came to the bar. She hadn't looked well, and he remembers being worried. He realizes that perhaps because of that memory, he feels even happier now to see her enjoying herself. Even just a little. At the bar, Seira begins to bring up something she wanted to discuss from a previous day. As she speaks, Masato smiles warmly, thinking to himself that a beautiful woman ought to be full of life. The memory shifts to a lavishly decorated room where Seira looks overwhelmed. He gazes at a photo of her on his phone, finding her incredibly cute. She is his angel, he muses, and her presence is what allows him to keep going. The narrative then flashes back to 1 month prior, where Seira, known as Mochizuki-san at her workplace, sits at her desk with a look of resolve. That office a month ago, an older manager confronts Seira, questioning why she didn't include the company name on a document as instructed. Seira, taken aback, explains that she had asked about it earlier and was told by the manager that it wasn't necessary. The manager coldly denies this, insisting Seira must have misheard as other colleagues listen in. With a condescending smirk, the manager delivers a final cutting remark, telling Seira, it's no wonder that even men run away from her. Seira's face contorts with rage as she trembles, clenching her fist. Standing defeated by her desk, the thought, I want to die, crosses her mind. Nearby, her coworkers gossip about the incident, recalling that Mochizuki-san was dumped the previous year, just a month after starting the job, by a man who apparently never even considered them to be dated. A flashback reveals the painful memory. Her first ever boyfriend from college, for whom she was completely over the moon, casually asks if she actually took their relationship seriously. He bluntly tells her it's not going to happen, revealing he already has 2 other girlfriends. Her joy shatters in an instant. As he walks away, she's left wondering why she was so happy with someone like him, questioning if it was just jealousy of others. Later, sobbing in her bed, she curses her own stupidity before anger or hatred can even set in. She screams at herself in frustration, calling herself an idiot. The aftermath is a floor littered with empty beer cans. Since that day, she has been utterly alone. Life devolved into a monotonous cycle of work and sleep. Scrolling through social media posts of sparkling happy couples no longer even spark jealousy. Staring at her own reflection, She felt alone in her past, present, and future, and began to question if she even had a reason to live. Back in the present at the office, a colleague with reddish hair approaches her desk. She cheerfully invites Seira to a boys' bar, saying a group of them are going and thought she might want to join. The friend adds that it's good for one's health to be around handsome guys. Seira, however, looks on with a tired, skeptical expression. She recalled her colleague's words of concern, noting that she hadn't been looking well lately. While Seira appreciated that Miki-san had been helpful, she honestly just wanted to go home and sleep. Her friend, however, had insisted, suggesting that if she came out, she might feel a little better. After a moment of surprise, Seira reluctantly agreed, prompting a burst of joy from her colleague. The enthusiastic hug that followed was filled with her friend's certainty that Seira would enjoy herself. As they arrive at a venue named Boys Bar Festa, Seira privately resolved to just make some small talk and then head home, not wanting to spoil her friend's gesture. Inside, a well-dressed man with light hair greeted her friend, calling her Miki-san. Her friend's excitement erupted as she beamed, calling out, "You see, Kun, I came again?" Seira, watch from the side. Startled by this sudden effusive display, she then winked, declaring her complete devotion to UCI. When he asked if she was requesting for the evening, Miki feigned coyness. Seira was shocked. She had never seen this side of her colleague before. As her friend was led away by UCI, who had his arm around another woman with long blonde hair, Seira felt a wave of discomfort. She found herself wishing she didn't have to see this womanly side of someone she respected. Her uncomfortable thoughts were interrupted when a group of 4 hosts approached. The one at the forefront, a young man with dark hair, offered a polite apology for the intrusion. Seira looked up, flustered by the sudden attention, took a sip of her drink, trying to compose herself. A small blush crept onto her cheeks, as she admitted to herself that they were all quite handsome. For a moment, she wondered if this experience might actually lift her mood. But this fleeting moment of hope was crushed by a wave of self-loathing. She convinced herself that men like them were probably laughing at pathetic women who had to pay for conversation. She felt like a terrible person for having such thoughts, especially when a host were smiling so kindly, showing no hint of annoyance. The negative thoughts continued to spiral. She felt hopeless, realizing that Miki seemed to have chosen a host for her. It didn't matter who it was. She was certain she wouldn't enjoy it. All she wanted was for her assigned host to arrive quickly so she could leave. She sat in the noisy bar, trying to rationalize her presence. She decided she would just chat for a short while and then leave, reminding herself that she had housework to catch up on next day. Her thoughts drifted to the simple pleasure of sleeping in. A polite voice suddenly addressed her. "Excuse me, milady." The voice belonged to a young man in a tailored suit, who approached her with a warm smile. He placed a hand on his chest and introduced himself as Masato, stating it was a pleasure to meet her. He sat down across from her. As she looked up, she was taken aback, bathed in the ambient light. His appearance was so striking that she found herself wondering if he was an angel. Leaning forward with the gentle expression, he then politely asked if he might know her name. A bit flustered, she replied that her name was Seira. His smile widened as he enthusiastically greeted her by name, repeating that it was a pleasure to meet her. He began the conversation by asking if she had come from work. As he spoke, Seira found herself studying his innocent, baby-faced features. A surprising thought crossed her mind. There was something about him that made her feel protective, and she realized that men like him existed as well. Unaware of her thoughts, he continued cheerfully, remarking that it was nice she had the following day off. He added that having a day off to look forward to is a great feeling. His enthusiasm was infectious. He clenched his fists with a bright expression, exclaiming that this was precisely why Friday nights always felt so exciting. He then asked Cyrus-san what plans she had for a day off. Caught completely off guard by this young man, who was so different from what she had expected, she felt a genuine smile form on her lips. She wondered at her own reaction before quietly agreeing with him. She immediately regrets her honesty, panicking internally. She feels she got too comfortable and revealed something nerdy, worrying that he will now dismiss her as just another otaku. His reaction, however, is one of pure excitement. He leans forward, his eyes sparkling, and eagerly asks what kind of game she plays, mentioning that he also loves RPGs and city-building games. He genuinely wants her recommendations. Seira remains suspicious, unable to believe his enthusiasm is real. She wonders if it's all an act, if he's secretly making fun of her, convinced that talking to a woman must be a bore for him. Deciding she should stop overthinking, she grabs her glass and downs the contents in one go. She reminds herself that this is a place for her to enjoy, not to second-guess everything. The alcohol hits quickly. She slams the empty glass on the table and begins to vent furiously about her boss, who announced to everyone at work that she'd been dumped just to humiliate her. Masato listens with a look of concern as she admits she can't even remember how many drinks she's had, before concluding that she herself is the real idiot. She slumps onto the table, confessing that she was the one who got carried away, actually believing he wanted a real relationship. Masato quietly processes her words, then asks for clarification, pointing out that her ex was the one who had asked her out in the first place. Her mind drifts back to that moment, the memory of him asking her out still vivid. She reflects on her own foolishness, realizing with hindsight that she should have understood what kind of person he truly was back then. Memory of his smug grin flashes in her mind. She had been so overjoyed by her first confession that she couldn't see anything clearly. Back in the present, Masato leans over her still form, his voice firm. He insists she did nothing wrong and that what her ex did was terrible, but then adds that this is just how things are for women. His last statement startles her. She lifts her head, confused. Masato looks away, his expression hardening as he states that he cannot accept a world where women don't even get to have a choice. He continues, a quiet fury in his voice. He concedes that there may be fewer men than women, but questions why that should make men superior. He despises men who act cocky simply because of that fact. From a position on the table, Seira looks up at him, wondering why he is getting so angry on her behalf. He sits back down, his posture rigid. He explains that men can just sit back and do nothing, yet women will still flock to them and shower them with attention. As he speaks, Seira watches him, a realization dawning on her. The men she knows would never ever say something like this. He looks at her with the gentle smile, his cheeks faintly flushed, and makes a sincere declaration. If it were him, he would want to date someone just like her, Cyrus Sam. His words strike Seira with the force of a physical blow, leaving her wide-eyed and speechless, a deep blush spreading across her face. He continues, leaning back casually as he elaborates on his point. He insists that Seira is beautiful and kind, someone any man would fall for, and that her ex-boyfriend simply didn't appreciate what he had. Hearing her story, he admits, made something inside him snap. Her mind is flooded with thoughts of Masato Kane. Since meeting him, her entire world has become brighter. Work no longer feels like a burden, and on her days off she has started working on self-improvement, all because she wants to be someone worthy of him. Every bit of effort feels justified if it means more time in his presence. He is, she realizes, her angel. The image of his face is seared into her mind, his name echoing in her thoughts. Later, lying in bed, she gazes at her phone with a look of pure adoration. She holds the device close, a single thought consuming her. She can't even imagine her life without him anymore. Her reverie is shattered when her friend Mickey calls out, telling her it's time to leave, and teasingly asking how long they're going to keep flirting. Startled, Seira vehemently denies it, exclaiming that they weren't flirting at all and referring to Masato as a lanky little, before trailing off. Despite her protests, her hand instinctively reaches out, gently straightening the collar of his shirt. He watches her, a calm and curious expression on his face. Mind races in a panic. She thinks he's effortlessly cool from every angle, absolutely flawless. The insult lanky was a desperate attempt to find anything wrong with him. She internally pleads for someone to acknowledge the sheer effort it took to call. Such a perfectly proportioned man, lanky. She buries her face in her hands, mortified by her own behavior. She insists to Masato that she wasn't making fun of him, but was simply overcome with embarrassment, lamenting what a pathetic adult she is. He seems to understand. She gently takes her hand to help her up. Acknowledging his own lanky frame, he asks if she can stand. With a warm, reassuring smile, he bids her farewell, asking her to please come again. As their hands remain clasped, the words finally escape her in a quiet, direct confession. I like you. The confession continues as they walk past her waiting friend. Seira admits that she likes him so much that, despite knowing it's selfish, she doesn't want him entertaining any other woman. Masato is visibly taken aback by her possessive declaration. She tightens her grip on his jacket. Her expression, a mixture of desperation and resolve. She forbids him from smiling at anyone else or taking requests from other clients, attempting to soften the intense demands by adding, "It's okay." This surprise melts into a gentle, knowing smile. He tells her that her demand is unfair, revealing a simple truth. He only works on Fridays, and she is the one who requests him every single time. Clustered by his revelation, she doubles down, insisting that just Fridays aren't enough, and that she wants to spend more time with him. She declares that if he's going to say things like that, She'll have no choice but to come every week. The intimate moment is shattered when her friend, Mickey, suddenly grabs her from behind. "What are you two flirting about?" she teases, accusing Seira of taking advantage of the moment she was paying the bill. Seira is horrified to realize they were being watched. Mickey continues her merciless teasing, mimicking Seira's possessive demand in a cute sing-song voice. "You can't." Utterly mortified, Seira screams for her to forget it immediately. Her friend bursts out laughing, satisfied at having witnessed such an amusing scene, and suggests they head to another spot. Seira, however, is left blushing and pouting, too embarrassed to find any humor in her friend's antics. She walks with her friend, a warm blush on her cheeks, and admits that life has felt a little more fun lately. She attributes a big part of that to Masato, but also gives credit to her caring senpai, Mickey, who walks beside her with a smile. As they part ways at the train station, an announcement declares the train's arrival. Mickey wishes her well, telling her she'll see her on Monday, and Seira returns the sentiment. Her thoughts, however, drift back to Masato. She realizes with a start that they got so carried away talking that it's now past midnight, and this is the last train. Her eyes find him walking away down the platform, and she quietly speaks his name. Instead of boarding the train, her feet turn, carrying her in his direction. She follows him out of the station and down the street, keeping a distance. A voice in her head repeats that she shouldn't be doing this, that she knows it's wrong, even a crime. And yet something makes him pause. He glances back over his shoulder, a hint of confusion in his eyes. His sudden turn sends a jolt of panic through her. She quickly ducks behind a nearby pole, her heart hammering in her chest as she gasps for breath, desperately wondering if he saw her. After a moment, he seems to dismiss the feeling and continues on his way, allowing her a quiet sigh of relief. The relief is short-lived, replaced by a wave of self-loathing. Leaning against the wall, she exhales, thinking she always knew she was a filthy person but never realized the full extent. She is utterly disgusted with herself. Her disgust isn't enough to stop her. She continues her pursuit until he arrives in an apartment door. Her eyes fix on a nameplate and she finally learns his full name, Katasato. Her fingers tapped against the screen, entering Masato Katasato's address. A storm of conflicting thoughts raged within her. She tried to reassure herself that she wouldn't use the information, that she wouldn't send anything, but the questions persisted. Why was she doing this? She didn't know. She couldn't even understand her own actions anymore. Despite her inner turmoil, a faint, unsettling laugh escaped her lips. She now stood directly in front of his apartment, listening to the distinct sound of a shower running from within. The sound drew her down to the floor. She pressed her hand against the cool surface of a wall, a thrill running through her at the realization that he was just on the other side. The thought alone was enough to excite her. An image of him filled her mind. In it, tears streamed down her face. If she were a look of utter bliss, she imagined confessing to him. "Hey, Masato, can I broken, you know?" The fantasy faded, leaving her slumped against the wall in the empty hallway. She sat there, drained, grappling with the overwhelming feeling that had taken hold of her. Her phone was active, its screen showing an audio recording in progress. Once again, someone had fallen. A final, resolute thought crossed her mind. She couldn't be stopped anymore. A package from a facility arrives from Masato. Lying inside a large cardboard box, he offers his thanks. As he unpacks, he reflects on his previous life in a foster care facility. He observes that while some things in this new world are the same as what he had before, there are also unfamiliar elements. She considers the fact that the Katasato Misato of this world apparently died, leading him to a startling conclusion. They must have switched places. His thoughts are interrupted by the woman with him. She tells him that no matter what kind of past he's carrying, she has already decided to take care of him. She makes one request that he tell her if he ever wants to go back to the facility. But he looks down, touched by her words. He assures her there's no way he'd want that, stating that he is nothing but grateful to her, calling her Ikak-san. His mood shifts to one of cheerful determination. With a smile and a thumbs up, he promises to repay her once he graduates, telling her to look forward to it. Ika seems momentarily surprised by his forwardness. She responds with a gentle gesture, patting his head. She advises him to simply enjoy his campus life for now, and that he can think about repayment when the time comes. As she does, Masato wonders if this is what having parents feels like. She turns to leave. He silently hopes that the version of him who was supposed to be in this world also met someone as kind as Ika. His sentimental thought is cut short when he glances at a clock and realizes with a jolt how late it is. The scene shifts to a bustling campus where students mill about outside a modern university building. Elsewhere on campus, a young woman with short, light-colored hair makes a final check of her appearance. She reflects on her week of thorough skincare and massages, confident she has created the cutest version of herself in her history. Her preparation is so striking that her friend, Kumi, calls out her name in utter shock. Her heart fluttered. It was a movie date with Masato. His smile was as charming as ever, momentarily flustering her. He noticed a reaction and asked if he had surprised her. Trying to compose herself, she complimented him, observing that he had so many cute clothes, to which he simply replied that he was fine. He then confessed that he always thinks she looks cute, admitting that he himself barely has any clothes, though he did get more that day. As they walked, she couldn't help but think how cute he was in turn. Compliment lingered her mind. He always thinks she looks cute. As she processed this, he suggested they look at some clothes since they still had time before the movie. She was taken aback, asking if it would be a bother, but he quickly reassured her it was not. Smiled warmly, declaring he would take her up on her offer, and asked if she, Komi-sensei, could pick out some cool clothes for him. Flustered by the directness, she stammered in awe and tried to backtrack, saying she was just kidding. Despite her initial hesitation, she quickly embraced the idea with enthusiasm. As I walked toward the store, she confidently declared that she would definitely make him look even cooler. Sometime later, they arrived at the entrance to the movie theater. Once inside and seated amidst their numerous shopping bags, Masato remarked on how much they had bought. Komi seemed a bit worn out and he apologized for getting too into it. He then sincerely thanked her, saying she was a huge help and that everything she picked out looked great on him. Placed the bags by his feet, reflecting internally that he probably wouldn't need to buy clothes for a while. He also admitted to himself that he couldn't resist the idea of having her dress him up just how she liked. His attention then turned to their surroundings. He commented on how surprisingly empty the theater was, speculating that it was likely because it was a weekday. She leaned in slightly, her excitement palpable as she noted how close they were sitting. She confessed that she hadn't watched many romance movies before. Masato then turned to her and asked if she knew why he chose this particular genre. A hopeful thought bloomed in her mind. Perhaps he chose it with a wish that she might start to like him, even just a little. She watches him as the theater darkens, his profile faintly illuminated by the light of the movie screen. Her gaze remains fixed on him, a faint blush warming her cheeks as they sit side by side in the dim light. Her hand rests near his on the armrest, and she finds herself wondering what kind of expression Masato would make if she were to take his hand right now. The thought gives her pause as she hesitates, questioning if you would forgive such a bold move. Deciding to act on impulse, she gently places her hand over his, hoping he'll understand it as something done in the heat of the moment. The contact sends a jolt through her and she flinches, whispering that she's scared as a pretense for a subnaction, senses her tension, but misinterprets it. He knows that if he pulls his hand away now, she'll be too mortified to stay, so he resolves to hold stiff. As a romantic scene plays out on the screen, she keeps her hand there, wanting to feel his warmth for just a little while longer. In response, he turns his hand and gently intertwines his fingers with hers. The sudden warmth makes her heart pound, while Masato finds he can hear nothing but his own frantic heartbeat. They sit together in the quiet darkness of the theater, their hands now firmly clasped together. He walks beside Komi after the movie, a bright, happy expression on his face. He exclaims that the film was really good, though he sheepishly admits that he could barely focus on it. He continues, mentioning that it's nice to watch a genre he doesn't usually see. Kumi, blushing, thinks to herself that there's no way he could be aware of her feelings. He then turns to her with a smile, suggesting they find another good movie to watch together again. In response, Kumi enthusiastically agrees, declaring they should watch all kinds of movies together. As they walk on, she silently wishes she could hold his hand. As if hearing her thoughts, Masato adds, "Someday for sure." The following day, Kumi is in her room, sighing contentedly. She clutches a box to her chest, lost in a blissful recollection of her time with Masato. Later in the bustling school cafeteria, she finds her friend Mizuo thanking her for saving a seat. Mizuo waves her over from across the room. As Mizuo eats, she declares that today is an extremely important day and that she's going for the win. Her statement leaves Komi puzzled, wondering what she could possibly mean. Kumi notes that katsudon seems like a heavy meal, especially given the cafeteria's huge portions. Mizuo looks up with fierce determination, confirming that is, of course, the point. Suddenly, Mizuo leans forward, forming a heart with her hands and passionately shouting her true intention to win in love. Kumi stares, utterly shocked by the outburst, explains to a curious Kumi that she feels she has a really good chance this time. She talks a lot with a boy from her club, Kido-san, and she's sure he feels the same because their eyes meet often. Kumi leans in, asking if this means she's finally going to confess. Kumi grins, teasing that Mizuo is on a roll. Mizuo protests, telling her not to mock her. After a moment, Mizuo confidently tells Kumi to just wait. Once she succeeds, she proposes they all go on a double date. Kumi's smile fades slightly as she wonders if her friend's confidence is a bad omen, a death flag, since they aren't even dating yet. She watches as Mizuo, brimming with confidence, declares that destiny waits for no one. With a wink, Mizuo announces she's going to confess right now, leaving Kumi to look on with concern. Her friend dashes off, shouting encouragement to herself. Kumi watches her go, a worried expression on her face as she recalls Mizuho's long history of rejections, wondering if she will be okay. Driven by this unease, she decides to take a quick look, standing up from her desk. She admits to herself that while Kido-san seems friendly on the surface, something about him feels off. She begins her search, peering through a classroom door window, but finds the room empty. He isn't there. Continuing down the empty hallway, she glances at her phone and resigns herself to heading to her next class. As she walks, her steps slow as she overhears a conversation. A male voice asks another if he's serious. The second voice explains with reluctance that he only talks to first years because someone named Satsuki told him to. The conversation is between Kido and a devastated Mizuo. He coldly asks if she misinterpreted his goodwill, his tone dismissive. With her head bowed in shame, Mizuo stammers an apology, which he meets with a contemptuous scoff. He then commands her to keep this quiet and to remember her place, turning his back on her as he dismisses the entire encounter as a waste of his time. Mizuho's hand trembles against the wall, her mind reeling with the thought that she cannot forgive him. Watching from nearby, Kumi's expression twists into one of pure rage. She sees internally, unable to forgive such a disgusting person for hurting Mizuo, and curses herself for not having recorded the cruel exchange. Her silent fury is interrupted by Kido's voice, suddenly close by, chiding her for eavesdropping. The thought flashes through her mind. If only she had recorded it, she could have exposed his true nature to everyone. Her thoughts still troubled by the previous day's events. She found Mizuo at school. Leaning down, she softly spoke her friend's name. In response, Mizuo threw her hands up in a dramatic wail, lamenting that she truly thought she had a chance this time. Her emotional energy, Kumi noted, was completely depleted. Despite the outburst, Mizuo quickly forced a bright, sparkling smile, remarking with false cheerfulness that things just don't go smoothly. Kumi could only watch, her own expression filled with pain and concern. Noticing her friend's worry, Mizuo tried to offer comfort. She told Kumi to hold off on a double date they had planned and assured her that she would find someone much better than that guy. She continued to gently push her away, reminding her that the third period was about to start and that she needed to get going, ignoring Kumi's hesitant protest. With a final cheerful wave, Mizuo announced she was going outside to cool off and told Kumi not to keep her own guy waiting. As she watched her friend's smiling face, Kumi knew with certainty she was obviously faking it. Her thoughts were consumed by her friend's selflessness. Even now, Mizuo was thinking of her, always positive and observant of her surroundings. All Kumi wanted was for Mizuo to be happy. Her gaze followed Mizuo as she walked away down a stairwell. As Mizuo descended, Masato passed by her on his way up. Entering the classroom moments later, she found Masato waving from a desk, calling out to her. He had saved her seat. He greeted her with a warm smile, handing her the day's handout. He thanked her for the seat, then quickly corrected himself, saying that since she always saves one for him, he wanted to return the favor. After all, he added, they had to help each other out. He seems like an angel to Kumi. As she looks at him, she thinks that all the goodness in the world must be condensed into him. Compared to the piece of trash from the foulest corners of the earth who hurt her friend, Masato is so perfect that God must have forgotten to give him a flaw. This thought brings her back to the source of her anger. Her expression darkens, her hands trembling as she clenches them together. She questions whether garbage like him ever had the right to hurt Mizuo. Her mind consumed by a single, repeating thought: she cannot forgive him. Her dark mood does not go unnoticed. Masato leans closer, his voice gentle as he asks if something happened, pointing out that she looks a little down. She hesitates for only a moment before deciding to confide in him, beginning to explain the situation. As she speaks, Masato's expression shifts to one of angry disbelief. Kumi explains that Mizuo is too kind to expose the man, even though she personally wants to speak up. He can hardly believe what he's hearing, muttering, "Seriously? What the hell?" Kumi continues, stating that everyone is deceived by the man's charming public facade because of his reputation. She feels it's obvious who people would believe if they tried to tell the truth. The injustice of it all overwhelms her. She confesses that she feels completely helpless, unable to do anything to support Mizuho. Her fist clenches tightly on the table as she admits that while they definitely can't forgive him, she feels powerless to ask. He offers a different path. Masato suggests that the only thing they can do is ensure Mizuho ends up happier than him. He tells Kumi that Mizuho should find someone much better, someone like him, and make sure her ex knows it. Words find their mark. Kumi's tightly clenched fist slowly relaxes as she considers his advice. Yeah, true, she agrees quietly. She sat with a serene expression, her hands clasped at her lap, and voiced her deepest wish. She wanted Mizuho to be happy. Masato observed her gentle smile, remarking on how important Mizuho must be to her. The thought brought back a memory of them walking together inseparable and joyful during their school days. In that memory, Mizuho's face was radiant with a wide, happy smile as she affirmed their bond. But the present was different. Mizuho walked alone, lost in the thought that Kumi was her most important friend. In that moment of vulnerability, a foot shot out, tripping her violently as a harsh voice berated her watch where she was going. She fell to the ground, the shock and humiliation bringing tears to her eyes. As she remained on the pavement, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed, and a pair of polished dress shoes came to a stop nearby. The person took a few deliberate steps, their presence now impossible to ignore. Then a calm voice broke the silence, asking if she was all right. She looked up to see a concerned young man leaning over her. At that very moment, a deep yearning filled her thoughts, a hope to one day find someone to love with all her heart. It was as if fate itself was orchestrating their meeting. The idealized image of love is one of wonderful, fun connection, a warm embrace shared between two people. This is the image Mizuho clings to. She desperately wants to fall in love, to finally know what that sparkling feeling is truly like. Her desire was fueled by everything around her, the music she heard, the stories she read. They all painted a picture of love as something beautiful. Ideal led her to question the very nature of affection. In a past conversation, she wondered aloud what love even is, or what it means to like someone. She admitted to Masato that while she'd found some people handsome, she never once imagined being their girlfriend. The romance she longed for was the kind that made one's heart race through simple gestures and words. Masato, however, seemed to ground her expectations, suggesting that perhaps that was just the reality of things. Despite her longing for such a romance, she felt the weight of societal expectations. She recalled the whispers and judgments. Wasn't embarrassing to be her age and never have had a boyfriend? The advice was always to just try getting into a relationship, to compromise and settle for someone good enough. Mizuho felt she had no choice but to do the same. Driven by this pressure, she tried so hard, pursuing someone relentlessly. In those days, she believed that just having someone agree to go out with you was something to be grateful for. Because if you didn't make a move yourself, you wouldn't get any chances at all. Her efforts, however, led to a moment of sharp disbelief. She remembers his words and can only think with a grimace if he was being serious. She recalled his callous question, directed at her, as if she weren't inconvenience. Why do I have to go through something like this? The memory fades, leaving her standing outside her apartment door in the present. She takes a deep, steadying breath, the weight of the recollection heavy on her shoulders. She steps inside and finally voices her turmoil to Kumi. She confesses that she didn't really want to date him. She just wanted a boyfriend. That was all it was. As Kumi listens with a knowing expression, Mizuho realizes that, strangely, she isn't angry. She feels a part of her friend understands. She listens as Mizuho, with a downcast expression, admits that she supposes it's her fault too. In response, Kumi declares her jealousy of Mizuho Dono and playfully suggests she might drop by and stir things up a bit next time, eliciting a small laugh from a friend. Her laughter fades as she attempts to change the subject, brightly announcing it's time to switch gears and find new guy. But the forced cheerfulness shatters as a chilling memory surfaces. The cold, condescending gaze of her ex. His words echo in her mind, questioning if she mistook his goodwill, telling her to know her place. The memory is so vivid she feels her voice catch in her throat, unable to speak. The weight of the memory is physical, forcing her back against the wall. She slides to the ground, trembling and utterly overwhelmed, questioning why this is happening to her. Curled up on the floor, she finally breaks down, tears streaming down her face as she sobs uncontrollably. Through her tears, she grasps for any other explanation for her state, sarcastically wondering if she's just getting motion sick on a train. The thought is so absurd it prompts a humorless laugh. She plucks a stray strand of hair from her cheek, her expression hardening with self-recrimination. She questions if she has always been this weak, thinking how pathetic she must look. The idea of anyone she knows seeing her in this state fills her with shame. Still searching for a mundane reason for her turmoil, she wonders if there's a place nearby that sells motion sickness medicine. She walks on. She berates herself, questioning what she's even doing, getting so hurt over a simple rejection. She tries to find comfort in the anonymity of the crowd, telling herself it's okay, that no one is paying attention to someone like her. She tries to rationalize her feelings away, concluding that her mental strength must be seriously lacking if a few harsh words can affect her so deeply. Despite her efforts to compose herself, another tear betrays her true emotional state. Lost in her thoughts, she is suddenly jolted back to reality as she nearly collides with a woman walking past. Startled, she realizes how disoriented she is, having been crying so intensely just a moment before. She stumbles from the collision, crying out as she hits the pavement. The woman she bumped in glares down, shouting for her to watch where she's walking. The impact jars her contact, lenses loose. Her vision immediately blurs, the bustling street dissolving into an indistinct haze as she realizes with a jolt that she can't see properly, forced onto her hands and knees amidst the passing foot traffic. She apologizes profusely, explaining that her contacts fell out and she can barely see anything. Her pleas are met with indifference, as the crowd simply parts around her. She continues to apologize, a small, desperate figure on the vast pavement. A wave of misery washes over her. Crawling on the ground feels utterly pathetic, and she just wants to disappear. As she laments what a terrible day it is, a man's voice cuts through the noise, asking if she is okay. She looks up, tears welling in her eyes, toward the source of the unexpected kindness. Before her stand a young man with neatly styled dark hair, dressed formally in a vest and bow tie, his expression one of genuine concern. He offers to help her look for her contacts through her blurry vision. She can't make out his features, but manages to thank him, still apologizing for the trouble. The man kneels down to search the pavement. The gesture feels so heroic that a wave of shame immediately follows. She doesn't want him to see her in such a sorry state. As he focuses on the ground, her own heartbeat becomes a deafening roar in her ears, drowning out all other sounds. She can only think about how pathetic she must seem to need help from a stranger like this. She felt a strange sense of unreality. Just a moment ago, the world had become unbearable. Their hands swept across the pavement, searching for the tiny lost item. Kneeling side by side, they continued the meticulous search on the sidewalk. The pair remained on the ground, a curious sight for anyone walking by. Suddenly, the man's voice cut through the air with a triumphant cry. He'd found it. He held the minuscule lens between his fingers, a smile of relief on his face. "I'm so glad," he said, holding out to her. "Here you go." As he placed it in her case, he looked at her with genuine concern, gently reminding her to be careful. Overwhelmed by his kindness, she thanked him profusely. His demeanor was so polite, so gentle. She accepted the case from his hands. She then asked about the other one, but she clarified that only one had fallen out. For a fleeting moment, she thought it felt as if he had given her a piece of jewelry, but dismissed the silly idea. The man simply acknowledged her statement, but a wave of panic washed over Mizuo. She had overreacted completely. If it was just one side, she could have managed on her own. She had caused so much trouble for this kind stranger, all because she panicked. She looks up the kind man who smiles and asks if everything is all right now. Overwhelmed and flustered, she can only manage to stammer that everything is awesome. He continues his kind offer, asking if she'll be okay on her own, or if she needs him to find a mirror for her. Internally, Mizuo insists she's fine, feeling she's already troubled him far too much. He accepts her refusal with a smile, telling her not to worry about returning the handkerchief he lent her. As he turns and waves goodbye, a sudden panic grips her. Her heart begins to race as she realizes he's leaving, and she hasn't even asked his name. Frozen in place, she watches as we're retreating back. The thought that he is so dazzling while she must look a complete mess paralyzes her. As the crowd moves around her, she clutches the handkerchief tightly and berates herself for her foolishness. The regret is overwhelming. She collapses to her knees on the pavement, chastising herself again and again. If only she had asked for his name, she could have found a way to return the handkerchief. Her heartbeat still thunders in her chest, a strange and powerful sensation she can't quite identify. Her face flushes as she presses the soft fabric to her lips, her heart pounding with a new startling rhythm. In her daze, her eyes fall upon something on the ground nearby, a pen. She realizes it must have been dropped by the man as he entered the nearby establishment, a place called Boys Bar Festa. Inside, Masato apologizes for being late as he carries in a box of supplies. A colleague thanks him for the errand, while another, seated nearby, expresses surprise, asking why Masato is working since he thought he was only scheduled for Fridays. Masato explains that he came in to help because they were short on people. His attention is drawn to another co-worker, Yusuke, who is loudly celebrating a personal victory. As Masato watches the scene, a hand reaches out and touches his hair, a voice asking what happened to it. Inside the Festa bar, a young man with reddish-brown hair cheerfully tousles Yusuke's hair. He remarks that he thought the new style would look good on him, fondly recalling how Yusuke, his senior colleague, had helped him a great deal when he first started working there. Yusuke, surprised by the rough gesture, asks if he got hurt. The reddish-haired man laughs it off, explaining that the stab-like motion was something he got from his girlfriend. His light-haired colleague observes that while the man is flashy, his mindset is the most similar to how things were in the old days. Watching the boisterous interaction from a distance, another colleague with neatly slick-back hair reflects on his respect for Yusuke. He admires that Yusuke isn't arrogant toward women. Snapping back to the present, he tells the others to get moving and announces he's going to restock the toilet paper. He heads to the restroom, mop in hand, and begins cleaning. As he works, his thoughts drift to the girl he had to leave behind in a hurry earlier. He wonders if she's all right. An image of her tear-streaked face comes to mind. He recalls the reason for her distress. She had been crying because she lost her contact lenses. Having finished his task, he pats down his apron. With the cleaning done, it's time to go through the checklist. Just then, his reddish-haired colleague appears, calling out his name, Masato. He tells Masato to get changed immediately, as he has a request from client. Masato, caught off guard while searching for his pen, can only ask what is happening. As he adjusts his tie, Masato learns that his regular client has arrived. He notes that it is rare for her to come on a day other than a Friday, and wonders if she would have asked for someone else if he had not been there. He asks if it is Seira's Sam. Indeed, Seira is there, and her expression is one of clear disapproval. The sight makes Masato's stomach sink. He realizes her reaction is likely due to his hair, which he now has no time to fix. He worries about what she will say, anticipating that her critique might hurt a little. His thoughts are interrupted as Seira calls his name. He looks up, startled, while trying to locate table 2. You find his client, Seira, sitting alone in a private room. Her head is bowed and her hands are clasped tightly in her lap, her posture conveying a deep sense of dejection. Sitting down with her, he immediately notices she seems down. He resolves to cheer her up, reminding himself it's his job. He explains his unexpected presence, mentioning he was on an errand in the back room when he saw her come into the shop. Attention then shifts her hair. As he begins to ask about it, Seira's hand clenches into a fist. She explains that a senior colleague styled it for her, then quietly asks if it doesn't look good. Sensing her distress runs deeper, he gently reassures her. He tells Seira that while he doesn't know what has happened, she is in a place where she can say whatever is on her mind. He offers a warm, comforting smile, adding that he truly enjoys listening to her talk, just as he always has. His kind words cause her eyes to well up with unshed tears. Her composure shatters completely. Tears stream down her face as she hides in her hands, apologizing repeatedly. Through her sobs, she confesses, "I saw it," leaving Masato utterly confused. Her mind flashes back to the scene she witnessed. Masato standing with another girl, Mizuo, whose face was partially covered by a mask. The memory is framed by her own, pained question of whether he was with a girl. From her perspective, the moment she observed felt like something out of storybook. It was, in her eyes, like the first meeting between a prince and a princess. This romanticized view of their encounter forces a devastating question into her thoughts. If they're the main characters, then what is her role? She sees herself as nothing more than a side character, a background extra, hopelessly watching the prince from afar, only getting in the way. Her fist trembles as she violently rejects the thought, a silent scream of no echoing in her mind. Her hand trembled as the thought consumed her. It should be her. She was the one who should be with Misato Coin. She recalled her own disheveled state, her face and hair a mess, her clothes dirty. A wave of self-revulsion washed over her, yet a desperate thought surfaced. If the other girl was like that, then maybe she still had a chance. This jealousy made her feel disgusting. She saw herself as just a background character, exactly where she belonged, while the heroine got the man. As these thoughts spiraled, she looked up at Masato, her voice barely a whisper as she apologized him. She confessed that she had ended up stalking him. His gentle demeanor remained as he pressed for answers, asking who that girl was, what Seira was doing with her, and why she wouldn't tell him. But her mind was elsewhere, fixated on the data on her phone. She knew it was a crime, and though she'd thought of deleting it countless times, she just couldn't let it go. Overwhelmed, she clutched her head, unable to form a coherent sentence. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression soft and reassuring. He told her it was okay, certain that she wasn't in the wrong. He knew she was a really good person. His kindness was too much. Tears streamed down her face as she apologized for everything, for stalking him, for the events of the day, and for the jealousy she felt. In a sudden rush of emotion, she threw herself into his arms, clinging to him tightly. She cried out that she was the worst woman ever, leaving him stunned and unsure how to react. They remained flustered, stammering slightly as she held on, the two of them now locked in an embrace on the sofa. He holds Seira close, gently patting her back in a comforting embrace. He reassures her that it's okay, telling her that he knows she is a kind person, is kindness. However, only seems to deepen her self-recrimination. She internally declares herself the worst, having just realized an incredibly selfish truth. She internally blames Misato for her feelings, thinking it's his fault for making her fall for him so hard that she lost control. She immediately hates herself for this thought, recognizing it as a way to deflect her own guilt. As she clings to him, she wonders if this overwhelming feeling is a desire to claim him and completely ruin him. Realizing the depth of her emotions, she decides she must apologize in advance, whispering a quiet, "I'm sorry, Masato-kun." Her apology carries a silent, possessive vow. She is never letting him go. Elsewhere, Mizuo examines a handkerchief and a pen, certain that both items belong to him. Sitting in her room, she inspects the pen more closely. A feeling of familiarity gives way to a sudden jolt of recognition as she notices the logo on its side. Her eyes widen as the truth dawns on her. The pen is from her own university, which can only mean that they are fellow students. The thrilling possibility makes her bury her face in her bedding, muffling a series of happy giggles. She clutches the pen to her chest, a warm blush on her cheeks. Her heart is pounding with a sparkling excitement she's never felt before, and she is filled with an intense desire to see him again. Seira clings to the man, her face buried in his shoulder as she reflects on her threads of destiny. A moment later, a sly smile plays on her lips as she adjusts her glasses. She realizes with satisfaction that events have finally been set in motion, heading in an unexpected direction. A few days have passed since Mizuo was harshly rejected. As she rests with her eyes closed, she reflects on a more recent event, concluding that it must have been a destined encounter. Her friend, however, is less than thrilled by this dramatic declaration, wishing she could have her worry back. Mizuo, sparkling with excitement, insists that destiny must exist. She recounts how, right after being dumped and feeling crushed, someone helped her after she dropped her contact lens. Ever since, she has been gushing about this destined one, comparing the moment to a prince on a white horse. Continues, admitting that while she's told this story many times to the point of exhaustion, this feels different. She wonders aloud if this is the first time she might actually fall for someone. Hearing this, her friend offers a small, genuine smile, saying she's glass. But emboldened, Mizuo sits with a profound expression. Her hands clasp as she declares her certainty that this is what it truly means to love someone. Her chibi form enthusiastically agrees, recalling her many childhood loves. She then shatters the serious mood, leaning and suddenly to whisper, "Just kidding." The abrupt shift leaves her friend blushing and completely startled. Seeing her friend's shock, Mizuo laughs and points dramatically, making a serious request. She wants help finding the guy. She playfully calls her friend, Watson-kun, prompting a weary sigh and the question of who she's calling Watson. Friend immediately points out the flaw in the plan, reminding Mizuo that she doesn't even remember his face. Mizuo counters that he had the same pen given to new students, but her friend dismisses this, noting that many people would have one. Unfazed, Mizuo confidently gives a thumbs up, insisting that she'll remember him once she sees him. She recalls a key detail: he'd slick back hair. Her friend internally notes that while it's a rare hairstyle, it's still not much to go on. Wondering why she's being scolded for being skeptical, as Mizuo declares that giving up is when the game ends. Her confidence fuels her imagination, which runs wild. She pictures herself as the grateful crane from a folktale returning to repay the man's kindness. She plans to return his handkerchief and tell him just that, prompting her friend to dryly comment that Mizuo is basically living in a fairy tale. As Mizuo daydreams, her friend's phone chimes with a notification. A message from Masato appears on the screen, asking if she can join him for the third period. A small, pleased smile spreads across her face. She stared at the message on her phone, a faint blush rising on her cheeks as she considered her reply. A situation brought to mind a recent conversation with Mizuo, who had collapsed onto a desk in despair. Mizuo confessed that she used to intentionally keep friends away from Masato, worried they would fall for him. With her own romantic prospects now in sight, she believed she no longer had to worry about such things. Told me then, recall the moment with Masato himself. He had approached her, admitting he felt partly responsible for a lack of friends, suggesting his own intimidating aura might be to blame. Returning to the present, Kumi made a surprising offer to Mizuo to join her and Masato for the next lecture. Mizuo was stunned, asking why she was allowed now when she'd never been permitted to meet him before. Kumi explained that since Mizuo had found her own destined one, she figured there was no longer any risk. She leaned in, her expression deadly serious, and stated her belief that if Mizuo were to speak with Masato for even 30 seconds, she would inevitably fall for him. Mizuo reacted with a mix of frustration and delight, exclaiming that while she was being made fun of, she was also happy. She sighed that love could truly ruin a person. Mood then shifted to pure excitement. Grabbing Kumi's face, Mizuo declared she'd always wanted to meet Kumi's bae, and would act as her official promo ambassador. A flustered Kumi insisted he wasn't her boyfriend, and pleaded with Mizuo not to say anything strange to him. Mizuo paid her no mind, instead grabbing her friend by the shoulders and earnestly encouraging her to just confess her feelings already. From a distance, Kumi's laughing retort echoed back, "Mind your own business." Later, a simple reply appeared on her phone screen from Masato, agreeing to her proposal for the three of them to attend class together. Sure. Her message was received by Masato, who reflected on the day's plan. He was happy to expand his circle of friends, but more than that, he felt a sense of relief knowing that Kumi hadn't neglected her own friendships while spending time with him. He had been worried because she was always looking after him, and he feared she might have become distant from her friends as a result. As he walked through a doorway, her voice called out his name. Turning around, he saw Kumi waving cheerfully from classroom, wishing him a good morning. He noticed another girl sitting behind her, and correctly assumed this was the friend he was about to meet. With a grand, sparkling gesture, she proudly presented her companion. This, she announced, was her best friend, Tanasaki Mizuo. He was immediately taken aback. Mizuo possessed a different kind of beauty than Kumi, and for a moment, Masato wondered if the world was populated exclusively by beautiful girls. He found himself momentarily captivated by her gaze. Kumi then completed the introductions, presenting her friend, Kata Sato Masato. He managed a polite smile and a hello, adding that it was nice to meet her and that he'd heard a bit about her from Kumi. Following the introductions, a brief, uncertain silence descended upon the trio as they stood together. The quiet was broken when Mizuo leaned in to whisper something to Kumi. As this happened, Masato's mind raced with anxiety, wondering if he had already messed up or come across as creepy. Mizuo then turned to him, apologizing for her surprise and confirming that Kumi had indeed told her a lot about it. She leaned in closer, studying his face with an intense curiosity that made him blush. Internally, she concluded that he was definitely quite handsome, a thought that prompted an exasperated sigh of her name from Kumi. Attempting to regain his composure, he offered to introduce himself properly, thinking to himself that she was certainly a lively person. Mizuo, however, recoiled dramatically towards Kumi, whispering that he had understood her earlier assessment perfectly, and for that reason, she found him terrifying. She formally introduces herself as Tonosaki Mizuo, extending a hand with a bright smile. As Kumi watches, pleased Masato bows and gives his own name, Katasato Masato. He takes her hand, a blush on his cheeks as he internally remarks on how small her hands feel. She continues to smile, thinking to herself that such small hands make her worry they might break. She reflects that while Kumi is also petite, Masato's hands feel even more delicate. As the three of them walk together through a campus building, Masato expresses his relief. He hadn't expected a pop quiz right away and admits he would have been in trouble if Kumi hadn't given him her notes. He gratefully declares that she saved the day. Comment draws Mizuho's attention, and he catches her staring at him with an unreadable expression. A sense of unease washes over him. The moment is broken when Kumi stops, announcing she thinks she left something in the classroom. She tells them to go on ahead, but Masato insists he's not in a hurry and will wait for her. Mizuo then offers to hold Kumi's back. She gratefully accepts, thanking them both before hurrying back up the stairs, promising to be right back. Left alone, Masato turns to Mizuo to ask if she's all right with waiting, and she cheerfully confirms she has no problem with it. She suggests they wait on a nearby bench. As they walk, Mizuo observes him, thinking to herself how kind he is. She enthusiastically agrees to his suggestion. She sits beside him, clasping her hands together as she internally marvels at the kindness she believes lies deep within his heart, calling him a true gentleman. Masato, misinterpreting her thoughtful silence, asks if she isn't waiting for someone just normal, but she quickly dismisses the idea. Her expression turns serious as she calls out his name. He turns to her, questioning. She adjusts her hat, her face shadowed and serious. She leans in slightly, stating that there is something she needs to tell him, the truth. She leans forward with a bright smile, making an unexpected request. She wants Misato to help her find her destined partner. Misato is taken completely by surprise. He cautiously agrees, asking for the person's name. She admits she can't provide too many details, only that it's her destined person, and that they're probably a first-year student at this very university. She presses for more information, like their department or other characteristics, but she playfully admits she doesn't know any of that. In fact, she reveals she isn't even a student at this school. Misato finds the request far too vague. As he sits and considers the few details she's provided, slicked back hair and their height, he thinks about his own network of acquaintances while she watches him, waiting for an answer. She suddenly clasps her hands together, pleading for him to use his network of friends to help her. She explains that when she saw this person, she felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if she'd heard their voice before, but quickly dismisses the idea. She reminds him that he is, after all, Kumi's special person. He considers her request, murmuring that he'd like to help if he can. Seeing his hesitation, she immediately worries that she has asked for too much. His shoulders slump as he bows his head, making a quiet, painful admission. He doesn't have any friends. Just then, Kumi returns, apologizing for the delay. Masato is surprised by her sudden appearance. Mizuo, however, is thrilled by his answer, exclaiming in delight. She tells him that she'd heard he had few friends, but if she happens to find someone who fits the description, she will let him know. As they walk together, Mizuo happily informs Kumi that Masato has agreed to help her search. Kumi thinks this is great. Mizuo reflects on how much fun this is, and how Masato is just as funny and kind as Kumi had described. Masato, for his part, silently wishes the three of them could continue spending time together like this. Later, at the train station, Kumi waves goodbye, mentioning she'll see Mizuo tomorrow as she watches her friend depart. Mizuo feels a surge of excitement, believing her university life is about to become even more enjoyable. Now alone with Masato, she observes that they take the same train line. A pang of guilt strikes her as she thinks of Kumi. Turning to Masato, she suggests they should get going. She decides to probe a little, asking Masato directly about the nature of his relationship with Kumi. He clarifies that there's nothing suspicious, they're simply friends. He adds with a gentle smile that Kumi is a very kind person. Mizuo, however, seems to doubt the simplicity of his answer. He continues, explaining that when he enrolled late and had no friends, Kumi was incredibly kind to him. He feels a sense of gratitude and doesn't want to betray that kindness. She listens to his genuine explanation and realizes with a jolt that he is completely oblivious to Kumi's romantic feelings. Her expression sours with exasperation. As they walk through the station, she playfully calls him a heartbreaker and hopelessly dense, wishing Kumi good luck. Her teasing stops abruptly as her eyes widen in shock upon seeing two familiar figures walking ahead of them. The sight freezes her. A wave of panic washes over her face as she instinctively ducks behind Masato, desperate not to be seen. He turns, confused by her sudden action, and calls out her name. Her mind races back to a painful memory. Satsuki, her friend, had encouraged her to talk with the first years. This led to her confessing her feelings to a boy named Kito, only to be rejected. The memory is so vivid she wants to flee. Masato's voice breaks through, asking if she's moved on. The memory sharpens, focusing on the cruel aftermath. Another male student, a friend of Kito's, had cornered her, sneering as he called her an ugly bitch who couldn't survive without clinging to boys. The cruel words echo in her mind, paralyzing her in the present. Her legs begin to shake, her voice caught in her throat. She laments that she and Masato were just starting to get along, and now he will see this pathetic side of her and be disappointed. The weight of the memory becomes too much. She doesn't want to feel that pathetic again, doesn't want to cry so miserably. The feeling of being an outsider consumes her and a single tear escapes her eye. Her mind reeled, trapped in the memory of the confrontation. The words echoed, a demand to know who she was, a confession she wished she could take back, but the details of what happened remained a painful blur. The source of that memory, Kito, now stood before Masato, a smug grin on his face. He casually introduced himself as Mizuho's friend, only to immediately follow it with a cruel jab, stating that nobody would ever date a girl as ugly as her. His insult ignited a protective fury in Masato. He lunged forward, his voice sharp and loud as he shouted that Kito was wrong. Mizuho is cute. From her position on the floor, Mizuho looked up, her eyes wide with astonishment. He then turned to Mizuo, his expression softening as he assured her that she is cute, both in personality and looks. Facing Kido again, Masato stated firmly that while he didn't know the details, he knew that part of the story was definitely wrong. His passionate defense resonated deeply within her, a stark contrast to a past memory of Satsuki asserting a higher position just because she was the one confessed to. In that moment, Mizuo realized Masato wasn't just kind-hearted. He was truly wonderful. She reflected on a common, huge misunderstanding that the one who is loved is always in a superior position. She hated that attitude, the way people look down on someone for showing genuine feelings. A new resolve hardened within her. She had to stop this. Despite her determination, a blush crept up her neck, her face suddenly feeling hot. She knew she should intervene, but she was flustered, wondering why he would get so angry for someone like her. A girl who, as he said, moves on quickly. Kido sneered, goading him further. "So, you're saying you date an ugly girl like her?" Masato's expression grew cold. He retorted that he wouldn't compare Mizuo to someone who uses people to validate their own worth without caring about their feelings, punctuating a statement by calling Kido an idiot. The sharp rebuke left Kido speechless, defeated. He declared he was done and walked away with Satsuki. As Masato turned and started down the hall alone, Mizuo quickly got to her feet, a small sound of concern escaping her lips. She hurried to his side, apologizing for making it hard for him to go to his club. Masato glanced back, dismissing her worries by saying he didn't care about that. Internally, however, a flicker of regret crossed his mind. He felt he shouldn't have acted so impulsively without thinking. As he stood there, Mizuo broke the silence with an apology. She explained that it was already difficult for her to be there, and she felt even worse for getting him involved, admitting she couldn't help but interfere despite knowing she shouldn't have. He waved off her concerns with a gentle smile, telling her to stop apologizing. He mentioned being interested in a new place nearby and offered to treat her, only to quickly add that he already has his sights set on someone, his primary crush. Hearing this, Mizuo could only think to herself how jealous she was. Her thoughts immediately drifted to Kumi, picturing her with Masato. She reflected on how Kumi is able to say out loud that she likes him, a freedom Mizuo envied, as the image of the two walking away played out in her mind. Mizuo put on a cheerful front. She thanked Masato for seeing her in such an embarrassing moment, and admitted with a forced smile that she had just confessed to a guy and been rejected. She continued, claiming that if she had known what he was like, she never would have confessed in the first place. Then, her tone softened slightly as she advised him that he doesn't have to force himself when things are tough. Expression changed, seeing right through her act. He told her that no one would be unhurt after something like that, and that she didn't need to force herself to be cheerful when she was hurting. He insisted that even though they'd just met, he could tell. Abruptly, he announced he was going to buy some drinks and told her to wait. As he walked off, joining two other young women in the distance, Mizuho's cheerful facade crumbled. She slumped down onto a nearby ledge, suddenly drained. She sat alone, his kindness echoing in her mind. "Was I always this easy to sway?" She murmured to herself, feeling a sharp pang of pain in her chest. Her heart pounded. She clutched at her shirt, realizing she already knew the name of this feeling but couldn't bring herself to put into words. She knew she had to endure it, to hold it back, because he was Komi's crush, her destined one. Overwhelmed by this painful realization, Mizuo pulled her cap down over her eyes. Her body trembled with the effort of holding back her tears. She walked alongside Masato and Kumi, her head bowed as she offered a heartfelt apology to Kumi. Masato, caught off guard by her sudden remorse, could only let out a small sound of surprise. Tears welled in her eyes as the internal weight of her emotions became too much to bear. She was beginning to understand that loving someone, truly liking them, was an incredibly difficult thing. As her feelings overflowed, Masato remained oblivious, looking ahead while holding a strawberry drink he had just bought. On a Friday afternoon, a hand grips a basketball. Lately, this has become a day to look forward to more than any other in the week. Nearby, one of the first-year students complains about being tired after a long week, wondering why they always get stuck with these kinds of chores. But Yuka Amida barely hears her, a gentle smile on her face as she holds a basketball, hoping she gets to play a lot with Oni-san today. Her friend calls her name, snapping her from her thoughts. Yuka admits to herself that she doesn't really mind the work, because it means she gets to see him after school, so it's all okay. The son question catches her completely off guard. She asks where Yuka has been going on Fridays lately, causing Yuka's face to flush in shock. She stammers, insisting it's nothing. Her friend immediately sees through the panic, teasingly asking if it's a guy and accusing her of having a boyfriend. Yuka loudly denies the claim. Mind flashes to him, the kind upperclassman. She thinks about how he's not her boyfriend, just an innocent person teaching her basketball. As she blushes at the memory, her friends decide they must follow her to see what this guy is like. Yuka overhears their plan and shouts for them to stop. Absolutely not. She worries that if they see how cool he is, they'll all start coming to see him. And because he's so kind, he would probably agree to teach them too. Brings a pang of sadness. This time is supposed to be just for the two of them. Just then, two second-year students approach them in the hallway. One comments that they look like they're having fun. Yuka timidly greets her assigned mentor, Sakuyama, a girl she finds intimidating and honestly dislikes. Without missing a beat, Sakuyama asks if Yuka has gotten a boyfriend. Before Yuka can answer, Sakuyama scoffs, dismissing it as a misunderstanding. She bet the guy is probably ugly anyway. The cruel remark leaves Yuka utterly stunned. She remains on the floor as her friends check on her, one remarking on the nasty personality of their senior, Meru. Yuka watches the upperclassman walk away with her boyfriend, Kenji, thinking to herself that she can endure teasing, but find it disgusting that Meru would bring her boyfriend along just to show off. The insult to the boy she admires, however, is something she cannot forgive. Fuming, she clenches her fist as she walks, finally arriving at her house and announcing she's home. Once inside, her agitation is palpable. She feels she can't wait to see him, knowing that once she does, any bad feelings will simply vanish. She begins to change out of her school uniform. While changing, she spots a folded towel and remembers she needs to return it. It's the one she borrowed from him. Holding it, she realizes it still carries a faint trace of his scent and brings it close to her face. She inhales deeply, a wave of bliss washing over her. She feels herself melting from the sensation, thinking that even though the towel has been washed, its power is still destructive. She decides there's nothing wrong with indulging just one more time. Her reverie is shattered when her mother enters the room, asking what she is doing. Startled, Yuka looks up as her mother reminds her that she was the one who asked for her water bottle to be prepared. Mother hands her the bottle. Yuka quickly thanks her and announces as she's leaving. As she rushes out, her mother looks towards the overcast sky, wondering if her daughter even checked the weather forecast. She soon arrives at a park, the rhythmic bouncing of a basketball, echoing from behind a chain-link fence. Stepping through the gate, she sees him. He greets her warmly, calling out her name. Flustered but determined, she declares that today she will finally claim his spot, all while thinking how cool he looks. Smiles, and she internally delights in a way he calls her Yuka without any formal honorifics. Pulling her sports bag, she is ready for their meeting. She stands before him, nervously wringing the hem of her shirt as he turns to face her. Gathering her courage, she declares that since they are rivals, he shouldn't hold back. She then asks him to feel free to just call her Yuka. Internally, she cringes, thinking she sounded like a samurai, and silently pleads with him. He watches her, a small smile playing on his lips. He breaks into a warm, genuine laugh. Her face lights up with joy at his response. He smiles down at her and agrees. All right then, Yuka. Today, I'm taking the spot again. He crosses his arms, reminding her that she tripped last week. He sets a condition. If she doesn't do her warm-up exercises properly, he won't compete. Overjoyed, Yuka clutches the basketball, eager to begin immediately. As the basketball bounces on the court, she readily agrees, thinking to herself that he's cute even when he's being cheeky. The game starts, and she immediately surprises him, definitely dribbling the ball past his defense. He pivots quickly, trying to block her path. She leaps with a shot, her eyes fixed on the hoop. The ball sails through the air, just beyond his outstretched hand, and sinks perfectly into the basket. Scratches the back of his head, a bit sheepish, and tells her he really meant to stop her that time. He praises her improvement, admitting that at this rate, she might actually take the spot back from him. Yuka beams, clenching her fists in excitement. Filled with determination, she declares that she will take it back for sure. Just then, the sky opens up and a sudden downpour soaks the court, catching them both by surprise. He suggests they switch to a fence, led Yuka to a nearby gazebo, seeking shelter from the sun downpour. He hadn't expected it to start pouring like this. Turning to Yuka, he asked if she had a towel. Soaked but still bright-eyed, she looked up and confirmed that she did. As he began to wring out his soaked, now see-through shirt, Yuka's face flushed a deep red. The sight was too much for her. She internally shrieked at how erotic it was. She glanced back, remarking that they couldn't continue their game in this weather. Noticing her stunned silence, he called her name, a questioning look on his face. Overwhelmed, she covered her face with her hands, trying to control her erratic breathing. Her mind went completely blank. She couldn't think of anything at all. She realized how bad the situation was. If he were to find out she was looking at him in that way, she imagined he would react with disgust, telling her to never come near him again. The mere thought of him saying such a thing sent a wave of panic through her. She felt she would seriously die if that ever happened. Turning her back to him, she squeezed her eyes shut, desperately trying not to give in to the temptation to look. He spoke, asking her for a secret, but his words barely registered. He reached out and placed a hand on her forehead, startling her. Concerned, he asked if she was feeling all right, noting that she didn't seem to have fever. The sudden contact of his hand sent a jolt through her. His proximity was overwhelming. She felt her heart was going to explode. He noted that she had gotten pretty cold, and before she could react, gently draped his jacket over her shoulders. He apologetically explains that the short-sleeve shirt is all he has, but it's better than nothing. He suggests they wait there until the rain subsides, and Yuka, clutching the jacket he gave her, quietly agrees. As they wait, Yuka's heart won't stop pounding. She is overwhelmed by the sensation of being wrapped in his shirt while he stands so near to her. He fidgets with the hem of his damp shirt, and Yuka feels as if her whole world is being colored by his presence. Voice cuts through her thoughts, asking her to please turn away for a moment. Startled, she looks back at him, questioning his request. After turning her back, she hears a rustle of fabric and a splash of water hitting the concrete floor behind her. The sound was him wringing out his soaked shirt. A wave of heat rushes to Yuka's face as she realizes what's happening, pleading internally for him to wait, thinking he must have brought a spare. Tells her to hold on, his voice coming from much closer. You could collapse a hand over her mouth, a gasp escaping her. The realization hits her with full force. If she turns around now, she will see him without a shirt. She tries to reason with herself, arguing that it's not her fault and that any girl in her position would look. She questions if it's truly okay to turn around as he continues to search through his back. Her internal monologue intensifies dramatically. Since no one is watching, she wonders if anyone would blame her for hugging him from behind or even licking him. Her expression becomes one of desperate, unrestrained impulse. As her wild thoughts peak, he suddenly exclaims that he's found it. The sound of him placing an item down with a thud seems to break her trance, her hand frozen mid-air. Yuka is jolted from a reverie, startled as she is shaken awake on the couch. Her eyes swirl with the disorientation as her mother's voice calls her name. Dazed, Yuka groans and recognizes her mom. The moment snaps into a memory, shifting to the doorway of the girls' basketball club, where a voice off-panel praises Yuka's amazing achievement. Inside the locker room, her two friends enthusiastically congratulate her for making the starting lineup in an official match. A beaming Yuka thanks them, sharing that it's her first time. Happy expression sobers as she looks toward the lockers. She explains that as a first year, she feels a duty to perform well for those who didn't make the team. The conversation is cut short by an older teammate, Sakuyama, who approaches with a severe look. She accuses them of not cleaning the floor properly and questions if they're ready to take responsibility should a volleyball player get hurt. But they believe they have cleaned it correctly. Sakuyama orders them to do it again. With a sigh of resignation, Yuka agrees. As she stands before the older students, Yuka's hand clenches into a tight fist. She understands immediately that this is a form of harassment. She resolves to simply endure it and turns to leave. But Tsukuyama calls out her last name, Mayeta. Yuka stops and quietly responds. In a sudden, aggressive move, Tsukuma grabs her shoulder, leaning in close to warn her not to let her success go to her head. She punctuates the threat with a loud kick against a nearby locker. She warned Yuka not to get the wrong idea, claiming her spot on the team was merely due to the coach's favor. Subdued, Yuka could only manage a quiet yes in response. She couldn't understand why this person, who hadn't even been a bench player, was so obsessed with tearing her down. Sakuyama's face was twisted in a contemptuous sneer. She clicked her tongue in irritation before turning to her friends, calling them over as she walked away. They sat together. One of her friends questioned why seeing a younger student in a lineup bothered her so much. The other remarked that if it were her, she would simply train harder, but then added that some girls don't even practice. In the background, Yuka began her 10 sprint laps, the squeak of her shoes echoing on the court. She walked away from the court, bag slung over her shoulder, reflecting on how complicated school clubs could be. Path led her to an empty outdoor court. She noted that the boy she called, Oni Ison, wasn't there, but quickly remembered it was a Sunday. She decided to practice for a bit before heading home, though she still couldn't shake the unpleasant feeling from the earlier confrontation. Dribbling the ball across the court, she reflected on her improvement. It was all thanks to training with him that she had gotten into the lineup in the first place. A blush crept onto her cheeks as she clutched the basketball. She decided she would try to copy his moves, admitting to herself that it was because she liked him. Eyes shone with resolve. She had memorized his every move, able to picture him perfectly in her mind again and again. She poured her resolve into her practice, drilling basketball moves with focused intensity. A leg through, a crossover, a sharp roll turn. She drove toward the basket with determination. Her drive culminated in a jump shot, but the ball struck the rim with a clang and bounced away, refusing to fall through the net. Frustration mounted, wiping sweat from her brow with her arm. She admitted to herself how difficult it was. She just couldn't seem to land that final fadeaway shot. Her thoughts drifted to her inspiration, the one she called Oni-san. He was truly amazing. A memory of his voice seemed to echo across the empty court, encouraging her to try again for sure this time. A small, hopeful smile touched her lips. Solitary practice was suddenly interrupted. At the court's entrance, a group of students had appeared. Sakuyama's voice cut through the quiet, remarking that they have found a nice spot. As they entered, they recognized her. One girl noted that someone was already there, while another pointed out that Yuka was wearing their school's jersey. Yuko's eyes widened in shock, wondering why they were here of all places. Sakuyama stepped forward, her tone laced with false sweetness. She commented on Yuka's diligence in doing extra practice, mockingly calling her the star first year. Yuka managed a hesitant hello, the chilling realization dawning that they must have followed her. She continued her taunts, suggesting that perhaps her group should practice there as well to get good, then asked Yuka for her opinion. Internally, Yuka pleaded with herself to remain calm, wishing they would just back off. Her words were punctuated by a sudden, aggressive action as she seized Yuka's wrist. Startled, Yuka quickly deferred, telling them to please go ahead as she was just leaving, and offering a polite thanks for her hard work as she tried to retreat. She looks down, a bead of sweat on her temple, as Tsukuyama leans in with a disarming smile. The older girl's voice is soft as she asks if she's being too cold. In response, Yuka can only manage a quiet yes. Sakuyama's smile widens into a menacing grin, and she cheerfully suggests they practice together. The grueling practice begins, pushing Yuka to her limits. A single sharp exhale hangs in the air. Bent over and gasping for breath, she struggles to recover. Sakuyama, casually holding the basketball, calls out to her, mockingly asking if she's already worn out and how she expects to survive a real match at this rate. Her vision blurs with exhaustion, sweat dripping from her chin. She pants heavily, wondering how much time has passed. Nearby, Tsukuyama casually wonders aloud if it has been 30 minutes or an hour. Her friend, watching with a detached smile, admits she doesn't even know anymore. The older girl then proposes a 2-on-2 match, claiming Yuka needs to experience match-style play. From her position on the floor, Yuka observes that while the upperclassmen are taking turns, she's the only one who has been forced to run without a break. Masato watches silently from the sidelines. She struggles to push herself up, her body aching. All she can think about is getting a drink of water, even just a little, before she can recover. Tsukima's friend calls out for her to hurry up, announcing that she's on offense for the 2-on-2 match. She looks over at her supposed teammate, the light-haired girl, who stands idly with her arms crossed. A grim realization dawns on Yuka. They have no intention of playing a real game. Her own teammate isn't even trying. She struggled to move, her legs refusing to obey. Normally, she could get past them easily, but now they felt leaden. From across the court, Tsukima's voice cut through her exhaustion, taunting her, suggesting she should just withdraw. Tokima pressed on, telling her to think about how Ayako-senpai must feel now that she can no longer play. The name made Yuka's eyes drift to the sidelines where she saw Masato. A sudden realization struck her. He was Ayako-senpai's best friend. Her mind flashed back to a team meeting. The bench members were being announced, and Ayako-senpai's name was among them. But instead of showing disappointment, Ayako had turned to Yuka with a bright smile, pulling her into a tight hug and congratulating her for making the starting lineup. The senior's encouragement had been unwavering. She had told Yuka to do her best, certain she would do great. Yuka remembered this kindness clearly. Even though she had taken her place as a starter, Ayako's support had made her determined to work hard for his sake. A memory faded, leaving her back in the court, legs trembling and breath coming in ragged gasps. "So could you step closer?" her voice sharp. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Before she could respond, Tsukuyama charged forward, slamming into her with force. Yuka cried out as she was thrown off balance, crashing hard onto the polished wooden floor. The impact stole her breath. Pain radiated through her body as shadowy, laughing faces swirled in her vision. A desperate thought echoed in her mind. Why did she have to go through this? The haze of pain, her focus narrowed to the basketball resting nearby. The reason was simple. She just loved the game. That was all. Her simple love for the sport was met with more scorn. Sakuyama and her friend loomed over her fallen form. They told her to get up, that the game wasn't over, condescendingly asking if she even knew the rules or needed to start over from the basics. Voices faded into a dull drone. Her body had reached its absolute limit. She had no strength left. She couldn't get up. She couldn't move anymore. She lay on the court. Her consciousness drifted into a dark, swirling void. The faces of her tormentors appeared as featureless, mocking silhouettes. A single defiant thought cut through the haze she did not want to lose to them. Her resolve, however, was wavering under the crushing weight of her exhaustion. Even though she didn't want to lose, her body was failing her. A single tear traced the path down her cheek, a testament to her silent surrender. At that moment, a firm step broke the tension. A young man had arrived, his voice cutting through the air with cold observation as he addressed the girls standing over Yuka. He remarked that they all looked like they were having a lot of fun. Hearing the familiar voice, Yuka looked up from the floor, her eyes wide with disbelief. She whispered, "Onii-sent?" He stood over her, his expression grim, arriving just when she needed help the most. At 10:28 in the morning, a doorbell chimes twice outside a quiet residence. Sound rouses Masato, who checks his phone from his bed. He sees a message from Kumi and recalls their recent conversation. She had mentioned being in the softball club and expressed confidence in her baseball skills, suggesting they go to a batting center together. Elsewhere, Sakuyama is already looking at her own phone. She notes that both Seira and Yuka have messaged her, and that Yuka was already at club practice by 7:30 a.m. A fond thought crosses her mind. Watching the diligent young girl makes her feel protective, almost like having a little sister. Masato, now dressed, stands by an open sliding door. He muses that if he doesn't get moving, he might seriously lose to Yuka's dedication. He steps outside, his eyes widening in surprise at a scene unfolding on a nearby sports court. Is met by Tsukuyama, who is standing right there. She gestures towards the court, confirming his sight. That's Yuka. On the court, Yuka dribbles a basketball, focused on her practice. Masato watches her through the chain-link fence and asks Tsukuyama if she's practicing with friends. With a hint of concern, Tsukuma simply replies no. The situation on the court is tense. Yuka is being aggressively guarded by two other girls, one with long blonde hair and another with reddish-brown hair. Something feels distinctly wrong. Sakuyama hesitates, worried it would be bad to interfere if she's misunderstanding the situation. Masato, however, stares with wide-eyed alarm, convinced that what he's seeing is no friendly game. On the court, the aggressive play escalates. The reddish-haired girl pins Yuka, declaring that her hesitation was a mistake. Unable to watch any longer, Masato steps onto the court. Yuka looks up in surprise and distress, calling out to her brother. He confronts the two girls directly, startled. They defensively ask who he is, reminding him they're in the middle of club practice. With a cold look, he questions their behavior, asking if gaining up on one person and laughing about it is how their club operates. Yuka watches him, a realization dawning on her. She thinks to herself that this is the first time she has ever seen her brother truly angry. His anger gives way to concern as he approaches her, offering a drink and telling her to rest. He apologizes for being late, and his gentle tone causes Yuka to blush, her body reacting on its own even in such a tense situation. He then turns back to the two girls. They claim they weren't bullying Yuka, merely testing if she was fit to be a starter. Masato cuts through their excuse, asking what they aim to accomplish by tormenting her. Yuka cries out that their claims are untrue, and Masato proposes a condition. If Yuka demonstrates her skill, they must back off. As they argue, Yuka remembers the truth. They couldn't beat her in a fair match, so they resorted to try to injure her body and break her spirit, hoping to force her to give up her starting position. His voice brings her back to the present. He asks if she thinks she can still move after resting for a bit, catching her off guard. He places a reassuring hand on her head, his expression softening into a supportive smile. He encourages her to show them just how strong she really is. Spirit renewed, Yuka agrees with a determined cry. Masato then turns to the bullies and proposes a match to settle things. The blonde girl scoffs at the idea of 4 against 2, but Masato clarifies that he isn't kidding. He states that he and Yuka will team up with 2 others, but adds cryptically that he won't be jumping. He listened as the reddish-haired girl accepted the challenge with a confident smirk, noting the height difference and accusing them of underestimation. In exchange for acknowledging Yuka as a proper starter if they win, she agreed to the deal. The girl then added a condition, turning the stakes against Yuka, whose eyes widened in alarm. If they were to lose, Yuka would have to withdraw from the starting lineup entirely. A wave of panic washed over Yuka. The thought of having to step down was unbearable, but the weight of the challenge left her corner. She knelt on the court floor, clutching a water bottle, her expression fraught with worry. Beside her, Masato looked down with a calm, steady gaze. After a moment of tense silence, Yuka looked up with newfound resolve and agreed to the terms. Standing, she boldly declared that they accepted and had no intention of losing. As they took their positions on the outdoor court, the opposing team announced they would star on offense. Yuka watched Masato take the ball, knowing this was inevitable. The game began immediately with both the blonde and reddish-haired players swarming Masato, effectively blocking him in a double team. He recognized them as two of the best players on the court. From a wider view, the 2-on-2 matchup was set, with Masato trapped near the center line. But when a sudden burst of motion, he drove low and fast, slipping right past the blonde player's defense with a swift dribble. The move left his opponent stunned. The blonde girl yelled at her teammate, demanding to know why she let him pass, while the reddish-haired girl could only gasp at his incredible speed. Teammate can only watch as Masato dribbles past with incredible speed, realizing with his start that he is on a completely different level. The move leaves Yuka breathless, her eyes wide with astonishment as she watches him leave, lands and immediately passes the ball to Yuka, creating a perfect opening. The reddish-haired opponent rushes to intercept, but she is too late, gritting her teeth in frustration, with a clear path to the basket. She takes the shot, sending the ball flying in a clean arc. The shot sinks through the net. Masato smiles and flashes a peace sign, declaring that they've scored the first 2 points of the game. Their opponents stand stunned for a moment. The reddish-haired player clenches her fist, anxiously wondering what she should do now. He admits to Yuka that his fatigue hasn't completely vanished, but he's still ready to play. Yuka, meanwhile, dribbles the ball, knowing this is no time to be lost in thought. They share a high five, both beaming. Yuka exclaims that this is fun, and Masato encourages her to score one more on offense. She agrees enthusiastically, while their opponent glares, vowing to stop them. That's the game resumes. Yuka reflects on the previous play. She realizes that if it had just been Masato, he could have easily scored from that position without any trouble. Her thought continues as she watches him being double-teamed. He had a clear shot, but he chose to pass it to her instead. Watched as Yuka took possession of the ball, her expression hardening with resolve. She was determined not to rely on him to carry the team, vowing to prove that all the effort she had put in would not be in vain. This display of confidence only fueled the opposing player's frustration. The reddish-haired girl stomped her foot, seething with anger and confusion at the turn of events. Ignoring her opponent's frustration, Yuka leaped towards the basket, releasing the ball in a clean arc. She knew, in that moment, that her hard work was finally paying off. The ball swished through the net. On the opposing team, the reddish-haired girl was sharply reprimanded by a teammate, who urged her to move properly and reminded her that Ayako's position on the starting lineup was on the line. Other players agreed, noting that they needed to focus on stopping Yuka. Amidst the chatter, a voice cut through, congratulating her on a nice shot. She turned in surprise to find Masato standing there. Flustered, she thanked him, complimenting his earlier pass. She realized she had been overly cautious, but a sense of relief washed over her. Everything was going to be fine. He smiled, expressing his confidence in her. He told her she was capable of getting past all their opponents on her own. He then gave her a new instruction. Next time, she should take the ball and try to break through their defense herself, assuring her that he would be in position to receive a pass if she needed it. His words filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. The simple fact that he trusted her gave her the strength to try 1,000,000 times harder. With a determined grin, she readily agreed. As the game resumed, she found herself facing a wall of defenders. 3 opponents, including the reddish-haired girl, now converged on her, their full attention fixed on stopping Maeda. Despite the pressure, a small, confident smile touched Yuka's lips. The reddish-haired opponent, however, seemed distracted. Her gaze shifted past Yuka to Masato on the sideline, and she angrily demanded to know who he was. Yuka looked up, her expression soft, and her smile genuine as she held the basketball. She answered simply that he was someone precious to her. The response only enraged her opponent further, whose face contorted with irritation. She looks toward Masato, her resolve solidifying. He is her one and only precious person, and she is determined to live up to his expectations. Fueled by this thought, she explodes forward, driving the basketball down the court with incredible speed. An opponent in a hoodie steps up to block her path, challenging her to take the shot. She responds instantly, faking one way with a leg-through dribble before executing a sharp crossover that leaves the defender behind. Continuing her drive, she recognizes this as her specialty move, pressing her advantage. The defense quickly collapses around her, with 3 players, including a frustrated blonde opponent, converging to trap her. As she leaps up for a shot, the reddish-haired player appears directly in her path, screaming a challenge. A wave of panic hits Yuka. She knows the shot will be blocked. At that exact moment, Misato jumps up from the sidelines. His movement is the signal. Instead of shooting, Yuka adjusts in mid-air, sending the ball in a high arc over the defender's outstretched arms. The reddish-haired player can only stare in utter shock. Yuka recognizes the play instantly. It's a move she has seen Misato perform over and over again. Teammate sinks the shot. Yuka watches, filled with the conviction that she can do it too, having practiced the move countless times. From the sidelines, Misato reflects that he only managed to master that same shot when he was in high school. The ball drops cleanly through the net, securing the point. Sometime after the game has concluded, Yuka recounts the aftermath to Misato. She explains that after the match, the senior boys basketball players confronted the girls who had been bullying her. This led to the senior girls, on her own team, approaching her to apologize. Yuka admits she didn't fully understand everything, but she has a strong feeling Misato was the one who prompted them to stop. She compliments his amazing final shot from his own game, then adds that when she asked if he knew anything about the apologies, he simply deflected. Still, she is certain he did something behind the scenes to help her. He listens with a gentle smile. He tells her the credit is all hers, since she was the one watching his moves and learning from them. The comment makes her face light up, and she thanks him profusely, her gratitude overflowing. Feeling the need to properly express her thanks, she bows deeply before him. She thanks him again for all his help, leaving him slightly taken aback by the formal gesture. Misato then explains what he saw. He had been watching for a while, at first thinking it was just practice. It was only when he saw the other players shove Yuka that he realized something was wrong and rushed into interview. He continues with a pained expression, saying that if he had noticed sooner, she might not have gotten hurt. He confesses that seeing it happen almost made him cry. His expression softens into a warm smile. He tells Yuka that despite everything, he's truly glad he got to play basketball on team with her. Touched, Yuka thinks to herself that he is far too kind. She tells Yuka she's seriously good at basketball, predicting she'll surpass him in no time. Flustered, she insists that's not true at all, explaining that she was just really happy to have had the chance to play with him. As she finishes speaking, he calls out her name, telling her to wait a second. His expression is suddenly serious, catching her off guard. Steps closer, taking her wrist in his hand. Yuka's eyes widen in shock, a blush rising to her cheeks as she stammers, her mind racing with a sudden possibility of what might happen next. Heart pounds in her chest as she looks up at him, the single overwhelming thought echoing in her mind: a kiss. She realizes that the flow of the day has felt almost faded, the situation seemingly perfect for such a moment. But the thought of her first kiss happening right here, out in the open, sends a jolt of panic through her. Mind spirals with frantic questions. The sun is still high in the sky. She wonders what she should do, whether she's supposed to close her eyes, resigned and expectant. She closes her eyes tightly, thinking of her parents as she prepares to give her first time to someone special. A soft peeling sound breaks the silence, but instead of a kiss, she feels a gentle pressure on her elbow. Opening her eyes in confusion, she sees a freshly applied band-aid on her arm. He smiles kindly, apologizing for not noticing sooner that she had scraped her elbow. Yuka can only stand there, arm outstretched, processing the complete misunderstanding. His apology seems to break her stupor. In a sudden movement, she leans in extremely close to his face, causing him to flinch back in surprise. She stands surprised by her sudden embrace, asking what's wrong. Yuka, her face pressed against his chest, murmurs that her thoughts are all jumbled up. Her mind races. It wasn't a kiss, but she's so happy that he cared for her. An overwhelming desire builds within her to let all her feelings out, even if he thinks she's strange for it. In response to her turmoil, he gently places a hand on her head, softly stroking her hair. She looks up, her eyes wide with surprise at the comforting gesture. He looks down at her and tells her she did a great job. She smiles warmly, adding that she was really cool, overwhelmed. Yuka's face flushes as she looks up at him, her eyes glistening, and finally confesses that she likes him so much. As her words hang in the air on the quiet court, her world narrows. It feels as if she can't see anyone but him, a profound confirmation of the feelings she just released. She continues to hold Misato tightly, a physical anchor for the powerful emotions surging through her. Later that evening, Misato lies on his futon at home, letting out a long, contented sigh. He rolls onto his side, picking up his phone with the thought that he should reply to some messages before he falls asleep. Scrolls through his notifications, a thank you from Yuka, and a typically thoughtful message from Seira. His attention then settles on a message from Izuhu, and he feels a pang of concern, realizing she hasn't seemed very energetic lately, and hoping she's okay. He noticed a message from Kumi as well. It made him realize that since arriving in this world, most of the people he had become close to were women. He got along with a senpai at the bar, but it wasn't as if they were in constant contact. He saw Mizuho's message asking about his plans for the next day. She seemed surprised to learn he was tutoring and immediately questioned if his student was a girl. Having sent all his replies, he settled in, ready for sleep. Drifted off to sleep with a peaceful expression. It had been 2 months since he arrived in this world, and he reflected that, surprisingly, things had somehow worked out. His dreams were filled with the faces of the kind people he'd met. He remembered Ike's warning to be wary of persistent flirts, but aside from that, he hadn't encountered any real problems. Meanwhile, in another room, Kumi stared at her own phone, waiting. There was still no reply. She wondered if, from this point forward, she could simply live a normal life. Her feelings for Masato had brought her immense happiness, but with him came a new set of worries. She couldn't help but think about the sheer number of other girls who were always around him. The news of his tutoring session was particularly concerning. If a student was a boy, it would be fine, but the possibility of it being a girl worried her. She knew Masato was attractive, but felt he was completely oblivious to his own appeal. Adding to her unease was the secret he kept about his part-time job on Fridays. Despite her anxieties, she hugged her pillow tightly, her expression hardening with resolve. No matter who her rival was, she was not going to back down. Later that night, at 6 minutes past 1 in the morning, her phone suddenly chimed with a notification. The sound startled her awake. She shot up in bed, her eyes wide, and called out his name in surprise. Stare at the glowing screen, her heart pounding. A single fervent wish echoed in her mind. Please, let it be a boy. Or if not a boy, she pleaded internally, at least a little kid, like an elementary schooler. A soft sigh of relief escaped her lips as she began to read. The worst-case scenario she had imagined, a high school girl who could become a rival, seemed to have been averted. Her relief was misplaced. The message from Masato was clear. His student was a second year in high school. A quiet confusion settled over her as she processed the words. The silence of the night outside, mirroring her own stillness. That same quiet night, the student in question sat at her desk, clutching a book to her chest. A soft blush graced her cheeks as she thought of her tutor, Masato. Elsewhere, Masato himself contemplated the situation with disbelief. Of all the possibilities, his student was a high school girl. The tutoring session was tomorrow. Masato studies his phone, looking at a recent deposit. He muses that the amount seems far too high for simple part-time work. He considers his 2 part-time jobs, both of which were introduced to him by Eike-san. A suspicion forms in his mind. She has probably been covering some of his living expenses. His phone buzzes with an incoming call from Kumi. He recalls that one of his jobs is at a boys' bar, a detail he found difficult to explain to her, remembering how out of place he felt. He answers the call while sitting down for breakfast. It's Kumi, and he wonders why she's calling so early. He had told her about his other job as a private tutor just yesterday, figuring that one was safe to mention. Her voice comes through the receiver, flatly stating his name. The tone sent a shudder through him. He listens as she confirms that he's tutoring a girl and asks if he's going to her house again today. Her voice is strangely emotionless, making him wonder if he's done something wrong. Later, as he walks to his tutoring session, he sighs in frustration, admitting to himself that he has no idea what sets off Komi's moods. He continues to ponder the situation, thinking he used to believe he was good at talking with girls. He resolves to explain the tutoring properly to Kumi next time, acknowledging that while she's normally sweet, she can become scary when something flips her switch. His mind drifts back to his youth. He recalls being able to talk to girls without awkwardness, even through puberty, perhaps because his childhood friend was a girl. He even dated girls who had confessed their feelings to him back then. The memory fades as he arrives, and his student stands before him. She adjusts her uniform's bow and apologizes for misunderstanding him, explaining her realization that Katasato Koen is simply kind to everyone. Masato walks away, bidding a quiet goodbye. His mind drifts through his past, recalling his upbringing in an orphanage where he was taught to always be kind. He reflects that for someone like him who thought kindness was the obvious path, his student's words had a profound impact. He also acknowledges that there were things he failed to handle well in his previous life. This introspection leads him to a difficult realization, visualized as a scale with his student balanced on both sides. It's true. He treated her the same way he treated other girls. Yet he feels he cannot bring himself to act differently toward her alone. He continues on his way, his resolve hardening. At this point, he doesn't think he can change his fundamental nature. He concludes that he simply needs to be kind to everyone. Walk brings him to the front of an impressive gated residence. He takes a moment to compose himself, deciding it's time to switch gears and focus on the job ahead. He lets himself through the gate and presses the button on the intercom, noting internally that the house is as fancy as ever. A moment later, a voice responds from the speaker, announcing they are coming. The front door opens to reveal a woman who greets him warmly as Masato-kun. As he kneels to take care of his shoes, she informs him that Shiruri is in her room, and that she will leave them to their session. He makes his way up the stairs, reflecting that it has been about a month since he started this tutoring job. It came about because the daughter of an acquaintance of Ikaz is aiming to get into the same college he attends. Reaching a closed door at the top of the stairs, he raises his hand and knocks gently. He announces himself as Kadasato and asks Shuri if he can come in. From behind the door, a hesitant voice gives him permission. The door creaks open and Shirori appears in the gap, looking up at him. He offers a simple greeting to his student. She greeted him at the door, her expression shifting to one of surprise as she noticed he wasn't wearing his school uniform. He simply said hello. This was Shinomiya Shirori, a second-year high school student. He smiled warmly, explaining that he'd only ever seen her in her uniform, so this felt new and refreshing. He added that the look really suited her. She averted her gaze slightly, simply acknowledging his comment. He chuckled, teasing that his compliments wouldn't result in less homework for her. She thanked him politely, and returned to sentiment, telling Masato he looked cool as well, before trailing off with a slight hesitation. His attention then shifted to a book nearby, and he asked what she had been reading. Internally, he reflected on his first impression of her, a demure model student who gave off the distinct air of a wealthy young lady. She held up the book, identifying it as a work by an author named Takasaka. She expressed how interesting she found it, quoting the opening line. Summer came down from the second floor. She then mused aloud, wondering about the kind of life someone would need to live to conceive of such a phrase. Hearing her thoughtful analysis, he gasped internally, suddenly realizing how shallow his own rich girl assessment had been. Shirori, meanwhile, seemed to grow a bit awkward, offering a slightly forced laugh of agreement. As they settled in a room to begin, he felt a pang of insecurity, worrying that a literary person like Shirori might find conversation with him unfulfilling. Her own thoughts, however, were entirely different. She marveled at how wonderful he was, still finding it hard to believe someone like him was actually in a room. Her admiration quickly turned to self-doubt. She sat down, her hands fidgeting in her lap as she questioned whether she was truly someone who deserved to be around him. After all, her real self was plain and frumpy. This, she reflected, was the general impression people had of her, an image she honestly had minded. Still, she had once allowed herself to dream like other people, hoping she might get a boyfriend when she became a high schooler. Those hopes and illusions, however, were quickly crushed. Recall the social hierarchy of her class. The handful of boys were always monopolized by the most popular top-tier girls. A leftover, someone as frumpy as she perceived herself to be, would never have a chance. That, she concluded, was simply the reality of her world. Her thoughts drifted as she overheard her classmates discussing their romantic standards. One girl mentioned that even a slightly cool guy is rated highly, while another found poor hygiene or being overweight an immediate turnoff, concluding it was better not to date at all. Lost in her own world, Shirori mused that, honestly, she didn't feel the need for a boyfriend. She clutched a book to her chest with a contented smile. After all, she had this to keep her company. But her fondness for these stories ran deep. She had always loved fantasy novels, the kind often categorized as books for women, because the characters within them possessed such beautiful hearts. In those worlds, the heroes were undeniably cool, and the heroines fell in love for clear, understandable reasons. The male characters she felt were truly beautiful. This beautiful, idealized world stood in stark contrast to her reality. Back in the classroom, the raucous laughter of her peers and their crude jokes served as a jarring reminder of the difference. She let out a heavy sigh, her frustration with the world around her palpable. Including that reality was ultimately trash, she decided she might just play games for the rest of the day. As she walked through the door and headed up the stairs, calling out that she was home, her mother's voice stopped her. Her mother looked at her with a curious expression, asking if she had made any new friends or perhaps even a boyfriend. Taken aback by the sudden questioning, Shirori stammered a denial. Mother pressed on, insisting that she needed to experience romance while she was still in school, particularly in an era with fewer men. It was a lecture Shiori felt she had heard a million times before. Light-hearted lecture suddenly shifted. Her mother's tone became serious as she asked if Shiori's choice of college was still the same as before. After a moment's hesitation, Shiori confirmed that it was. She cheerfully explained her plan. A friend of hers knows someone who attends that college, and she was thinking of having him tutor Shiori. Despite her daughter's protests that she doesn't need a tutor, she insisted, pleading for her to just meet him once. With a sly smile, she announced he would be coming this Saturday, leaving Shiori completely stunned. Reluctantly, she trudged down the stairs, muttering to herself about how pushy her mother was being. Tried to rationalize her resistance, thinking that talking to people was a real pain. Besides, she could study perfectly well on her own. Without any friends to distract her, she had all the time in the world. When Saturday arrived, she was in her room, lost in a daydream, lying on her bed. She swooned over a fictional hero, marveling at how perfect he was, cool, smart, strong, and super kind. A true god in her eyes. Fantasy was cut short by her mother's voice from downstairs, announcing the tutor's arrival. She always expressions sour as she thought to herself that, of course, such perfect people only exist in fiction. There's no way someone like that could be real. She tried to dismiss the intrusion, figuring he would be leaving soon enough anyway. But then, a sudden realization struck her. She was still in her school uniform, still grumbling about the drag of being tutored right after morning classes. She cautiously opened her door. A young man's voice greeted her immediately. She looked up and was struck silent. The young man stood before her with a gentle, friendly smile, and a faint blush rose on her cheeks. Mother appeared beside him, beaming as she made the introduction. This was Kata Sato Masato, the boy she'd asked to be Shiori's tutor. Gushing over how handsome he was, she prompted her daughter to say hello, leaving Masato slightly perplexed. Completely flustered by the sudden introduction and his appearance, she stammered, pleading for them to wait just a moment. She collapses to the floor just outside her room, her face flushed. The realization hits her with full force. Nobody told her the tutor would be a man. Scrambling to her feet, she enters her room, fuming. She's certain her mother, that evil witch, kept this a secret on purpose and resolved to tell her father everything. Her anger quickly turns to panic as she surveys the state of her room. Her clothes are strewn about and her gaming console has been left on. The panic escalates when her eyes fall upon her bookshelf. It's filled with novels and manga of a decidedly erotic nature, things she absolutely cannot let him see. In a desperate move, she grabs a piece of cloth to cover the incriminating collection. After a frantic attempt to hide her things, she pauses to adjust her glasses. The image of the tutor, Masato, flashes in her mind, and she has to admit to herself that he was rather handsome. Taking a deep breath, she opens the door just a crack to face him. "Sorry to keep you waiting," she says, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. He responds with a disarmingly kind smile, insisting it's fine, and that it was his mother's fault for the miscommunication. As Shiori invites him in and gestures for him to sit, he thanks her. His presence in her personal space suddenly feels overwhelming. As he looks at her, a question in his eyes, the thought screams through her mind. A handsome man is in her room. She struggles to regain her composure, pushing her glasses up her nose. This can't be real. She thinks there must be a catch. He has to be awful in some way. Noticing her turmoil, Masato admits that he's also a bit unsure of the situation. Internally, she panics, feeling her voice is too quiet, and that the whole situation is too much to handle normally. Despite her anxiety, she manages to speak, clarifying the plan. "So today we talk, then decide if you'll be hired as a tutor, right?" She listens as he gently suggests that the arrangement might be too sudden for her, and that she can always speak to her mother later if she has reservations. His kindness is overwhelming. She can't help but wonder why he's being so considerate. She takes a seat and begins the interview, asking why she's interested in his university. She offers a vague response about the nice facilities and large library. Her mind races with suspicion, convinced his pleasant demeanor is just an act to secure the tutoring position. Unaware of her inner turmoil, he smiles warmly, deducing from her answer that she must be a book lover. Question about what kind of books she reads is accompanied by a brilliant smile that sends her into another spiral of panic. She instantly realizes she hasn't thought this through. If she admits to reading cheesy romance stories filled with handsome heroes, she's certain he'll be completely repulsed. Desperately searching for a safe answer, she claims to read literary fiction. He seems impressed by her choice, admitting that he personally finds formal writing difficult to get through. His praise only fuels her internal crisis. She berates herself with a lie. He hasn't shown a single flaw. The thought crystallizes in her mind. A person this perfect simply cannot be real. Resolved to expose his true nature for the sake of her own future, she begins to probe. She suggests that someone like him must have plenty of other offers and would surely prefer to teach a cute student, not a plain girl like herself. His simple questioning why catches her off guard. She presses on, convinced that her rude and provocative words will force him to reveal his true, unpleasant self. But her test fails completely. He dismisses her self-deprecation, stating firmly that if she is serious about getting into his university, he will do everything in his power to help her, regardless of anything else. His response is the opposite of what she expected. He smiles with genuine warmth and tells her that she's a truly wonderful person. He then adds that when he first saw her, he thought she was beautiful. The compliment leaves her utterly speechless, a blush creeping across her face. Her mind, the world transforms. She sees him not as a tutor, but as a hero from one of her stories. A prince who has crossed dimensions just to meet her, extending a hand to lift her up. Later that night, alone in her room, she replays his words, a smile spreading across her face. The thought that this person will be coming to her room every week from now on fills her with a giddy excitement, and she collapses on her bed, her heart fluttering with possibility, her mind fixated on the image of a prince-like young man. Clutching a book to her chest, she felt a blush rise to her cheeks. The book was a romance novel titled The Saint and the Red-Haired Knight. As she stared at the cover illustration, her feet shifted nervously on the floor, a restless energy building within her. She then glanced at her own reflection in a nearby surface. In stories, she mused, there's always a lovely heroine at the hero's side. It's only natural. She wondered aloud with a hint of melancholy if she looked the part at all. This fleeting hope quickly curdled into harsh self-criticism. She berated herself for her cringe-worthy delusions, convinced that no one would give a freaking virgin like her at the time of day. The idea of a lame, glasses-wearing high school girl ending up with a cool hero seemed utterly impossible, a fact she felt she had no choice but to accept. Yet this bleak realization sparked a sudden, desperate resolve. If only she could be like that heroine. She turned and shouted for her mother, pleading to be taught how to do makeup. From that moment on, her entire lifestyle changed. She stopped braiding her hair, letting it fall freely, and she switched from her usual glasses to contact lenses. With her transformation underway, she walked toward the school building, steeling her nerves with a quiet determinant. All right. She strode into her classroom, attempting to project confidence by planting her hands firmly on her hips as her classmates chatted amongst themselves. But her outward bravado quickly crumbled. Standing near the classroom door, her face flushed and a nervous sweat broke out on her brow, revealing her deep-seated anxiety. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Hey!" Her heart pounded in her chest as she braced for the worst. She desperately hoped she didn't look weird. Her mind filled with the fear that everyone was thinking, what's a frumpy girl like her trying to do? She flinches, her hands clasped nervously as a group of 3 female classmates approaches her desk. Her heart pounds, bracing for their judgment. Instead of the expected criticism, one of the girls leans in with a bright smile, remarking that Shiori has a different vibe and asking if she had a makeover. Another girl with blonde hair chimes in, admitting she used to think normies were a totally incompatible species, but found it got along just fine. The first girl adds that, surprisingly, she's made friends in the class. Overwhelmed by the positive reception, Shiori can only manage a quiet agreement. This newfound camaraderie leads them on a shopping trip. Her new friends praise her, saying she looks super cute and help her pick out casual clothes which she barely owned. They urge her to try on a prim and proper dress, which she agrees looks good. This is exactly what she wanted. She feels this look will earn her a passing mark with him. Wearing the new dress, a wave of determination washes over her. She feels confident that if she can stand beside the hero now, the social gap between them might finally be accepted by others. Later, a knock at her door makes her jump. A familiar male voice calls her name, identifying himself as Kadasado and asking if he can come in. She nervously agrees. She enters, his presence so bright it feels blinding. She has to shield her eyes, thinking to herself that it takes all her willpower not to blurt out how incredibly handsome he is. His gaze wanders over to her desk, landing on a book she left out. He casually asked what she was reading today. Hannah grips her. She left out the erotic novel. Though she disguised it with another book's cover, the thought of him finding out is mortifying. Masato, however, simply reads the title on the fake cover, commenting that the author is great and wondering about the kind of life that leads to such an opening line. She forces a strained smile, immensely relieved. Her ruse worked. She hadn't read a single millimeter of the book used for the fake cover. She agrees to begin the session, placing herself in his care while internally vowing to be more careful with her book's fake cover. Her thoughts, however, drift back to the novel's absurd premise of beautiful boys raining down, which elicits a nervous laugh. Outburst leaves Misato looking on with a neutral expression. Internally, however, Shiori is overcome with joy, savoring the moment. She admits to herself that while studying isn't her favorite activity, the time she gets to spend with Misato is pure happiness. This happiness is short-lived as the lesson proves difficult. She apologizes profusely to Misato, feeling that she is too dense to understand the material, even with his clear explanations. Frustrated with herself, she steels her resolve. She is determined not to be a burden and vows to comprehend the lesson, no matter what. Struggle prompts Misato to lean in close behind her, his voice near her ear. He offers to guide her through the reading order by tracing it with his finger. The sudden intimacy sends a shock through Shiori, her face flushing as she wonders what is happening. It begins to trace the text, but Shiori's focus is shattered when she feels his other hand resting on her back. The unexpected touch sends her mind into a panic, her brain seemingly shaking from the overwhelming sensation. The pressure of his presence over her becomes too much to bear. Suddenly, she shoots up from her chair, startling him, stammering an apology. She excuses herself to use the restroom. A surprised Misato can only watch as she rushes away, her hand clamped over her mouth. Once clear of the room, she stands frozen, trembling from the encounter. She slides down the wall to the floor, the door shut behind her. The feeling of his touch lingers intensely on her back and near her ear, a phantom sensation spreading across her entire body. She struggles to compose herself, feeling her prim and proper mask begin to crack under the strain. It wasn't fair, she thinks, but such lustful feelings are unbecoming of a heroine. Inside, Misato looks on with concern, wondering if he got a little too close, his own sense of distance thrown off. All Shiori wants is an outlet for the overwhelming emotions coursing through her. Mind races, imagining the expression Misato would make in that moment of intimacy. The desire intensifies. She doesn't want to feel him through his clothes. She wants to feel his body directly. The raw, overwhelming urge to push him down consumes her, and she collapses, striking her head against the floor in a desperate attempt to quell the impulse. As she struggles on the floor, Misato remains in the room, completely unaware of her crisis. He looks down with a slight frown, wondering if he somehow made her angry. But Shiori rises, her previous panic replaced by a steely resolve. With a determined glint in her eyes and a hand covering her flushed face, she makes a new vow. She will conquer him, no matter what it takes. The fifth girl was proving to be just as dangerous. At the office, Cyrus stares at the weekly schedule board, a question forming in her mind. She notes that her colleague, Miki-san, has taken Friday afternoon off. As she stood there contemplating, a colleague greeted her. Seira mused internally that Friday was usually the night for their banquet at the boys' bar, wondering if Mickey's absence from the schedule meant she wasn't going this week. Her thoughts were interrupted by Mickey herself, who wished her a good morning. Mickey pointed to the schedule, clarifying that she was still coming to the banquet and not to worry, complaining that Mondays are rough. She encouraged them to get through the week. Suddenly placed a hand on Cyrus's shoulder, startling her. With a sly grin, Mickey leaned in close, her tone shifting to one of playful intrigue. She leaned in even closer, her expression teasing as she asked if Seira wanted to know the reason for her time off. Seeing Seira's hesitation, she pressed on, insisting she must be curious. Flustered, Seira admitted that she was. Her colleague whispered directly into her ear, asking if she knew what a companion's shift was. The question struck Seira with sudden realization. She recalled it was a system where a guest meets a host beforehand to go to the bar together. The implication was shocking. She then triumphantly announced that she was going on a date with Yusuya Cohen before they head to the bar together. Mickey explained that the bar rarely allows guests to be accompanied by men, a privilege reserved only for a host's absolute favorites. Cyrus' face fell, aghast to the news. With envy, Seira grabbed Mickey's shoulders, demanding to know if the host had asked her out himself. Mickey smugly confirmed that, on the contrary, she had been the one to ask him. She breathed a sigh of relief, her expression softening. Internally, she admitted that if UCI had been the one to initiate, she would have been gritting her teeth in pure jealousy. Her thoughts then drifted to Misato's smiling face. Her friend waved goodbye, offering a final piece of encouragement. She reminded Seira that Misato-kun likes her too, and that they have something coming up. Another colleague overheard and chimed in, suggesting Seira should try inviting him out herself. calling it a great idea. At the office, Seira's colleague Mickey excitedly mentions that the bonus payday is coming soon, declaring it perfect timing for companion outings. Seira agrees, just as a general announcement reminds the staff to submit their transportation reimbursements. As her colleague walks away, she wonders what she should do, considering giving Masato a present. The idea takes root. She muses that it might not be a bad idea and questions if you accept it. Her thoughts drift to an imagined evening. She pictures herself and Masato at an elegant restaurant, the city lights twinkling behind him. In her fantasy, he looks up from his phone, startled, as she presents him with a gift. Daydream continues as she stands behind him, a hand on his shoulder. He looks on, flustered, as she opens a small, elegant box to reveal a ring. But reality intrudes on a fantasy. She considers that he might not even know which finger put it on, realizing that such a sudden, serious gesture would likely just scare him away. Abandoning the grand gesture, she opts for a more direct approach. At her desk, she types a message, starting with a simple, "Good morning," before asking if he would like to go somewhere with her this Friday, carefully adding that he can say no if he doesn't want to. After sending the message, she taps her finger on the desk, a nervous energy filling her. She takes a deep breath, steeling herself. This, she decides, is her chance to take a new step forward. Her resolve is firm. She thinks that even just grabbing a bite to eat before going to the bar would be a special occasion for her. She is determined not to let them remain just customer and staff forever. The quiet productivity of the office is suddenly pierced by the distinct ping of an incoming message notification from her device. Screen displays Masato's reply, an enthusiastic, "Yes," followed by "Good morning." "Sure, that's fine." A wave of pure joy and relief washes over Seira's face as she reads his acceptance. On Friday, the day of their date, she meticulously prepared herself. Elsewhere, Masato was seen off by a small, waving girl as he departed. She slipped into a public restroom for a final check, anxiously patting herself down and wondering if she smelled sweat. Stepping back outside, she felt more composed. With her makeup and hair fixed, she reassured herself that she would be fine, even though the meeting time was fast approaching. As she walked, however, she found it strange. The simple thought of meeting him outside of their usual environment was making her heart race more than ever. A memory of him calling her name, Cyrus-san, surfaced, bringing a smile to her face. She had never realized something so simple could bring her such happiness. Her reverie was broken by the sight of Masato himself, waving as he approached and apologizing for the wait. His appearance was overwhelming. She thought he looked like an angel. No, a devil. His coolness was so intense, she felt she'd be happy even if he punched her, a thought she quickly dismissed, knowing he would never do such a thing. Gaze lingered on his clothes. She wondered if he had dressed more maturely to match her. The way his shirt was unbuttoned, revealing his collarbones, struck her as far too sexy, causing her to turn away in a fluster. Masato looked on, puzzled by her sudden reaction. He asked if she had said something, but she quickly brushed it off, insisting it was nothing, and that she hadn't been waiting long at all. She then thanked him for making the restaurant reservation, and he cheerfully prompted her to go. As they walked, she quietly looked forward to what was next. She then offered her a gentle smile, and she was completely undone. Covering her blushing face with her hands, she thought to herself that it was impossible. Her Masato was just too cute. Upon arriving at the stylish restaurant, the reality of the situation washed over her. As they were led inside, she was filled with a single hopeful thought. They were both on the same page that this was a date, right? She watches as Masato, blushing slightly, takes an astounding city view from their table, remarking on how beautiful the place is. With a soft chuckle, she teases him, noting that getting so happy over this just shows he's still kid. He looks away, but she leans forward, a gentle smile on her face, and adds that his reaction is precisely what makes him cute. He quickly refutes her claim, insisting that he is, in fact, definitely grown up. As he speaks, she considers the attention they're drawing from the other diners. She internally admits that while she can't really blame them for staring, the constant gazes have been annoying. Feeling of indescribable superiority washes over her. With a confident, almost smug smile, she silently declares to the unseen onlookers that this boy is hers. Masato, noticing her expression, simply looks on with a hint of confusion. Attention then shifts to the bill. She insists on paying for everything and encourages him to order whatever he wants. A flustered Masato protests, asking to at least pay a little, but she is firm, reminding him that since she invited him, he won't be paying for anything. She reiterates that she's not short on money. In her mind, the only thing truly worth spending it on is Masato. Later, as their food is served, she explains that she had considered a more high-class restaurant, but worried it might make him nervous, wanting him to simply enjoy himself. He takes a bite, and his eyes light up with delight as he declares it delicious. She is captivated, thinking his sparkling eyes make him seem just like a kid, and admires how elegantly he eats. Softly, she calls out his name. They sit together. A wave of affection washes over her. She thinks about how much she loves him, how even in small moments like this, the list of things she loves about him just continues to grow. After their meal, Masato lets out a sigh of pure satisfaction. He remarks that the food was incredibly delicious, trying to recall the last time he had eaten something so good. Smiles completely content, and she gazes at him with adoration. To her, he is pure and adorable, seemingly untouched by anything sordid in the world. A warm smile graces her lips as she tells him she's glass. She looked up at him, her curiosity finally getting the better of her, calling his name to get his attention. She asked him directly why he was doing this particular job, a question she had been wanting to ask for some time. She knew, even as the words left her lips, that it was a question she probably shouldn't be asking. Hesitated, a soft sound escaping him. Seira watched him, her mind racing. She had already concluded that Masato wasn't the type to willingly choose this kind of work. He stood out so clearly at the bar. The more she learned about him, the more her desire to understand him grew. But she could see the reluctance on his face. He clearly didn't want to answer. He waved a hand dismissively, assuring her it was nothing major. Then, his gaze dropping, he began to explain that it was because he didn't have any money. The simple, direct answer caught Seira off guard, and she immediately apologized for asking such a difficult question. He continued explaining that he didn't have any parents and had grown up in an institution. It was through the kindness of someone at the bar that he was able to start working there. The word institution hung in the air, and Seira's mind quickly made the connection an orphanage. Wave of regret washed over her. She bowed her head sharply, apologizing profusely. Internally, she berated herself for being so stupid for prioritizing her own curiosity over his feelings. Masato, startled by her sudden outburst, was quickly reassured by her that she wasn't bothered by his story at all. He insisted that it was truly fine. In fact, he considered himself fortunate now, able to live a normal life. His face broke into a radiant, blushing smile as he declared with genuine feeling that he was happy. His pure, unadulterated joy left her momentarily speechless, her eyes wide as she stared at him. Later, as they walked through the city at night, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within Seira. Masato thanked her profusely for the wonderful evening, but she felt she hadn't given him anything in return, simply considering it her way of expressing gratitude. She turns her head, a warm blush spreading across her cheeks as she avoids his gaze. Masato looks over at her, a hint of gentle confusion in his expression. As they begin to walk, a sense of triumph fills her. She had successfully managed to set up their next date. She asks if he would be willing to go out with her like this again, and he readily agrees, saying they should. Agreement solidifies a shift in his mind. He realizes that their dynamic has changed. They're no longer just a customer and a staff member. He thinks that next time, perhaps they should meet after his work instead of before. Meanwhile, Seira's own thoughts drift toward their evolving connection. She calls out to him softly, resolving to become something more to him. Someone he can rely on. Someone who can listen if anything troubles him. Gathering her courage, she looks at him with a hopeful blush and asks if it would be bad if they held hands all the way to the bar. Another direct question catches him completely off guard. He freezes his eyes wide with surprise, a blush rising to his own cheeks as he stammers, momentarily speechless. Despite his fluster, he manages to agree, covering his face with one hand in embarrassment. As their fingers intertwine, Seira feels a surge of joy, noting how his nervous touch lifts her heart higher. Emboldened by the contact, she leans in, resting her head against the shoulder. She understands that he is opening his heart to her, a direct result of her getting closer, and him allowing her to do so. The feeling of closeness is overwhelming. A contented smile graces her lips as she thinks to herself that it feels absolutely amazing. Looking at his blushing profile, her internal praise continues. She finds him cool and, at the same time, undeniably cute. As they held hands, Cyrus's thoughts took a strange, somber turn. She looked upon him not with simple affection, but with a sense of ownership, thinking of him as her poor, pitiful Masada. His innocent, blushing smile only fueled the feeling that had just been born within her, a powerful desire. She offered a comforting smile in return, telling him it was okay and vowing to work hard so he would never have to experience such a thing again. She then moved behind him, gently covering his eyes with her hand. Her expression was serene, her resolve clear. She would protect him. Her protection extended to the unpleasant sights of the world, like the overflowing trash in a nearby alley. He didn't need to see such filthy things, she decided. She would not let him suffer. Whatever he wished for, she would grant. This resolution solidified as they walked on together, their hands still intertwined. A new thought formed in her mind, a quiet declaration. Let's stay together forever. Masato, beside her, seemed to sense the shift, his expression turning to one of slight surprise. Face, however, was hidden from his view. A dark, possessive smile spread across her lips, her eyes obscured by shadow. Her promise echoed in her mind, a vow for all eternity. She would never let go of his hand. Amidst the incessant chirping of cicadas, Masato walks under the sweltering sun. He considers the oppressive heat, thinking it might have been better to stay in his room. But the thought of the electricity bill kept him from turning on the air conditioner. The approach is a fenced-in court, musing that while it's usually empty, there would surely be people here on a Sunday. As it gets closer, the sound of a bouncing ball confirms its suspicion. Hearing through the chain-link fence, his eyes catch the motion of a basketball being dribbled on the asphalt. His gaze settles on the player, and he recognizes her instantly. It's Yuka. The court, Yuka dribbles past her friends, noting to herself that she isn't playing alone today. When her teammates call out, telling her she's open, she responds with a determined shout, calling that she's open as well, while another friend urges her to shoot. After a successful play, a beaming Yuka gives a high five to her teammate, who congratulates her on a nice shot. As Yuka's friend remarks on her impressive leadership skills, Masato watches from outside the fence. He observes them, thinking they must be tired and should take a break soon. He hesitates, his feet frozen in place. He thinks to himself that he shouldn't interrupt them, that it wouldn't be right for her only Isan to interfere. But before he can turn away, Yuka's head snaps in his direction, a bright, knowing smile on her face. She exclaims that she's been found out, telling him she always knows immediately when her brother is around. She was met with an apology from her brother, who offered to leave, thinking his presence was a nuisance. Yuka could only stare, confused by his assumption. Her confusion was quickly interrupted as her friends swarmed around her. Their curiosity piqued. They chattered excitedly, asking who the person was, one of them trailing off with a speculative thought. Their speculation immediately grew more specific. One friend recognized Masato as the man from the previous Friday, while another excitedly wondered aloud if this was Yuka's older brother. Flustered, Yuka shouted a denial, but a third friend mused that if her brother was teaching her basketball, he must be very skilled. Seizing on this idea, one of the girls eagerly turned towards Masato, pleading for him to teach them basketball as well. Hearing the request, Yuka seemed to come to a quiet, resigned understanding of the situation. The sudden development left Masato sweating nervously, while Yuka's expression was one of pure, wide-eyed shots. Despite his apprehension, he was soon on the court with them. He explained that he couldn't teach much in the sweltering gym, but the girls were thrilled by his help. Off to the side, Yuka watched with a displeased power. Her annoyance stemmed from a deep-seated possessiveness. He was her big brother, she thought, her mind then critiquing his advice, noting that one should be more aware of their fingertips, not just the palm. As he continued coaching, praising the other girls for being quick learners, a new resolve hardened in Yuka's expression. Clutching a basketball, she thought to herself with focus. She was serious about this. Her friends seemed to notice the intensity. One of them smiled at another, remarking on how much Yuka must truly love basketball. Brother then turned his attention back to her. He began to say something he had told Yuka before, and at his words, a deep blush spread across her face as she shyly looked away. He smiled, explaining that the time they'd spent together when he first taught her was special, a memory of the ball flying from her hands before he even realized it. Words made her heart flutter. She clutched her chest, thinking how happy she was that he felt that way. But that moment was fleeting as he was already back on the court, effortlessly dribbling the ball around her. From the sidelines, her friends watched in awe. Satsuki called out for a pass, while Yuka, her cheeks still warm, could only think how amazing he was. This admiration quickly became a problem for Yuka. Her friends swarmed Masato, excitedly calling him Oni-isan. Yuka stood apart, fuming. She wondered why they were all using that name. He was her big brother, and if anyone should call him that, it was her. Her thoughts spiraled as she stood on the court. Should she call him Masato-san? But she recalled him saying how happy it made him when she called him Oni-san. Her internal debate was cut short when Masato called out her name, snapping her back to the game. With a sense of resolve, she made a decision. This was the way to go. She silently thanked him. After the practice session concluded, Masato praised the girls for their hard work and encouraged them to keep it up in their club activities. They all responded with a unified yes. And then he turned his attention specifically to Yuka. Before he could speak, however, Satsuki stepped forward. With a curious look, she asked Masato directly what kind of person Yuka was to him. The question caught Yuka completely off guard, and she let out a choked gasp, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. Satsuki wasn't finished. She turned to her friend, a mischievous glint in her eye, and asked if Yuka wasn't curious too. As she spoke, she reached out and pinched Yuka's cheek, causing her to yelp in pain and surprise. As Yuka struggled, Masato watched them, a thoughtful expression on his face. He considered the question. He was curious, especially after what had happened before. He wondered if perhaps she had started to like him, but concluded that to him, she felt like a little sister. He leans in close to Satsuki and confirms her assumption with a smile. Yuka, standing right there, is visibly shocked by his words. The word sister echoes in her mind, her expression a mixture of disbelief and hurt. She tries to rationalize it, acknowledging to herself that he has always been a close and cherished presence in her life. She understands why he would feel that way, but the thought still stings. Own thoughts, however, reveal a deeper truth. He knows that as long as everyone thinks of her as his sister, he can't make her his girlfriend. He maintains this facade because he is, in fact, in love with her. This realization seems to steal Yuka's resolve. She turns back toward the group with a determined expression. She stands before Masato, her gaze fixed on him, ready to speak her mind. He looks back, slightly surprised by her sudden change in demeanor. Surprise softens into a gentle, knowing smile. Cheeks flush as she clenches her fists, gathering her courage. She tells herself that she wants him to like her, and then asks him directly if he has a girlfriend. He responds not to her, but by leaning in to whisper to Satsuki, telling her not to ask such things before quietly confirming that he doesn't have one. Yuka, watching the private exchange, becomes flustered. Satsuki beams with delight, exclaiming that his answer is great news and very unexpected, especially since she heard he was crying about it. Beside her, Yuka closes her eyes in utter embarrassment, is utterly mortified as her friend Miho enthusiastically raises her hand and volunteers to be Masato's girlfriend. Masato looks on, taken aback by the sudden declaration, while Yuka reels in shock. Following the outburst, Yuka formally thanks Masato for his help. He then steps closer, about to say something which makes her visibly nervous. From a short distance, her friends watch the interaction unfold. They whisper apologies for interfering, but she, completely flustered, quickly denies that there's anything to be sorry for. She turns her attention back to him, blushing as she shyly invites Masato to come and watch one of her games in the future. Seems to ponder her invitation as she clarifies that she truly wants him to see her play in a real match. Internally, she resolves that she's tired of being treated like a little sister. She wants their relationship to move forward to become something more. Despite her internal resolve, she loses her nerve and dismisses her thoughts as nothing. He, in turn, simply asks if they will see each other again soon. Her spirits fall as she laments her own lack of courage, resigning herself to the idea that she'll always just be his practice partner. To her surprise, he suggests that next time they should practice alone, just the two of them. Suggestion changes the atmosphere entirely. He smiles warmly, explaining that it would be better if he could focus solely on teaching her. Overjoyed, she eagerly agrees to his proposal as she turns to leave. A blush spreads across her face as she wonders if he feels the same way, that it's better when it's just the two of them. In her happy days, she notices her shoelace has come undone. Her hopes void, she continues her practice with Masato. He soon notices her footwear, crouching to point out that her shoes are quite worn out. He observed that they aren't proper basketball shoes, and she confirms that she only has regular athletic shoes for indoor use. He considers this for a moment, explaining that proper basketball shoes would be better to reduce the risk of injury. With a nod, he seems to make a decision. Suggestion that they go buy a new pair together catches her completely off guard, leaving her momentarily speechless. Her shock quickly melts into pure joy. When he proposes they go shopping next week, she eagerly agrees, her mind already racing with the thought of a date with him. Before she can fully process her excitement, a familiar voice calls her name. She turns to see her friend with pigtails waving, a wide, knowing grin on her face. In an instant, she is surrounded by her friends. They playfully chastise her for not introducing them to such a great guy, accusing her of trying to keep him all to herself. Their teasing continues as they chant the word date, much to her flustered embarrassment. She can only think that they're getting ahead of themselves. The following week arrives, bringing the day of their planned outing. Dressed in a new outfit for the occasion, Yuko arrives at their meeting spot to find Masato already there. She greets him, and he remarks on how early she is, though he himself arrived even sooner. Even observes that this is the first time he's seen her in casual clothes since she's always in her basketball gear. The personal comment takes her by surprise, her eyes widening slightly. She nervously tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, a faint blush on her cheeks as she asks him what he thinks of her outfit. She smiles warmly, telling her she looks cute and that the clothes suit her well. The compliment lands perfectly. She internally admits that she consciously chose her most mature-looking outfit because this is a date with him. She clutches her bag, flustered but pleased, and manages a quiet thank you. His gaze remains on her as he makes a small sound of acknowledgement. He leads the way, thinking to himself that while he's happy with her reaction, he was secretly hoping she'd call him cool. His thoughts quickly shift as he spots a promising-looking store ahead. She enters the massive shoe store, her eyes wide with amazement, gripping her purse tightly. She resolves to make a strong impression on him today. He notes how spacious the store is, pointing out that it sells more than just basketball gear before suggesting they head to the basketball section. He then asks if she's been to a sporting goods store before, and she admits that this is more or less her first time. She wonders if the store was recently renovated. Her thoughts then drift to Masato himself. He claimed he doesn't practice basketball, yet he's so skilled. She concludes that he must be an incredible natural talent. Dr. Gaze wanders across displays of baseball gloves and soccer balls, leading her to a new thought. He probably played other sports before. The realization settles in as she watches him browse the shoe selection. She knows almost nothing about him yet, pulls a shoe from the shelf, suggesting it might be a good choice for outdoor use. His voice snaps her out of her reverie, and she looks around, exclaiming at the vast number of options available. She stood before the vast wall of shoes, a new resolve forming in her mind. From this moment on, she decided she wanted to learn everything she could about him. Broke the silence, asking if any particular pair had caught her eye. She looked down, a bit shy, and confessed that she would be happy if he chose for her, especially since they were similar to the ones he used. Readily agreed, picking up a specific shoe. He explained with a smile that this was the type he used for indoor practice, pointing out a design on the side that he found particularly cool. Yuka's eyes widened into life. Her decision was made in an instant. "I'll take them," she declared, a bright smile on her face. Her quick choice seemed to surprise him, but she was already turning to call for an employee asking to try on the pair. After trying them on, she confirmed her choice with certainty. Masato watched her, a warm smile on his face as she settled on the new shoes. A happy thought crossed her mind. Now they would have matching shoes. As she savored the moment, he asked her to wait, mentioning there was something else he needed to buy. He turned and walked off, leaving her to wonder what he was getting. But moments later, he returned, holding something concealed behind his back. As he announced his return, she felt a pang of regret, thinking she should have gone with him to look at the basketball equipment. Her eyes caught a glimpse of the item he held, and she thought it looked cute. He then held out a shopping bag directly to her. Surprised, she could only stare as he offered it, simply saying here. Her shock was palpable. She stammered, insisting that she had brought money from her mother to pay for them. He gently dismissed her protest, explaining that it was a gift to celebrate her making the regular team. Flustered and blushing, she was left speechless by his gesture. He reached out and gently patted her head, asking if it was okay. Overwhelmed, all she could manage was a quiet sound of acceptance. She bows deeply, thanking him profusely for the gift. Masato, with a gentle wave, simply tells her she is welcome. Her face lights up with a radiant, blushing smile as she accepts the present from someone she deeply admires. He smiles back, encouraging her to practice hard from now on. The sheer joy of the moment is almost overwhelming. Another young girl with a long ponytail rushes over to hug Yuka, exclaiming how happy she must be. Masato watches them, asking with a laugh if she's really that pleased, to which Yuka enthusiastically agrees. As they part ways, a thought crosses her mind. She had wanted him to see her as more than just a little sister. But for now, this feeling was enough. She leans against his arm as they walk together, content to simply savor this moment of happiness. Later, walking home alone as night falls, she wonders how she can ever graduate from being just a sister in his eyes. That night, lying in bed and clutching the shoebox, she reflects on their interaction. The physical affection ended with a hug and a pat on the head. If she wants something more than that, it would have to be something like a kiss. The very thought sends a jolt through her, and she buries her blushing face in her pillow. She thrashes about, telling herself it's impossible. Yet a part of her reasons that for him to do so much, he must be at least somewhat aware of her feelings. Her mind flashes back to his expression in the store at that very moment. lying in her bed and clutching the striped stuffed animal. Yuka lets out a soft sigh. She finds herself pondering the nature of a first kiss. The kind one shares with her first love and wonders just how sweet an experience it could be. The thought alone sends a wave of heat through her. She buries her blushing face deep into the plush toy, a tiny flustered sound escaping as her eyes reveal the intensity of her feelings. Her restlessness grows, her legs kicking beneath the covers as her mind races further. What if, she considers, things were to progress even beyond that? Outside, the house is still under the dark sky, but sleep is far from Yuka's mind. Her thoughts are in turmoil, and it is clear that tonight will be a long, sleepless one. Walking together after school, Masato lets out a weary sigh, lamenting the upcoming weekly test and his lack of confidence. Mizuo cheerfully tells him it'll work out somehow, but Kumi interjects, pointing out that Mizuo always says that and just barely scrapes by herself. Mizuo ignores the comment, clinging happily to Masato's arm and declaring their shared space to be comfortable and precious. Kumi watches them, a flicker of unease on her face. She reflects that it has become natural for the three of them to be together, but it's a very delicate balance. It is precisely because of this balance that she fears expressing her own feelings. Terrified, it might shatter everything. The school building stands impassively against the clouds. Her thoughts are interrupted as Masato turns toward them with a friendly smile, beginning to speak. She brings up their earlier conversation about go to the batting center. As he speaks, Kumi's mind races with worry. If she's too complacent, someone else might snatch him away. She feels a desperate need to close the distance between them. At that moment, Mizuo asks if he's free today, and Kumi immediately jumps in, eagerly agreeing to go. Walking ahead, Kumi declares her intent to show off her true skills. Mizuo teases her, questioning her abilities despite being a former softball club member. Kumi retorts that Mizuo still doesn't believe in her, while Masato watches, amused, as Kumi adds that it will be fun to see Mizuo try to hit. Mizuo turns to Masato, complaining that Kumi is saying she doesn't trust her at all and asks him to intervene. She then playfully adds that he must burn Komi's amazing performance into his memory, because she's an untrustworthy but talented person. Masato simply agrees. Leaning in, Kumi asks Mizuo directly if she's coming along. Mizuo averts her gaze, remaining silent for a moment as Masato looks on. Silence breaks with a wide, cheerful smile. She apologizes, claiming she already has plans, and tells the other two to have fun by themselves. Kumi is taken aback, asking if that's really the case. Mizuo confirms, cheekily adding that the popular Mizuo-chan is very busy. With a final energetic wave, she dashes off, calling out that she'll see them tomorrow. As she runs, Kumi watches her go, thinking to herself that it's unusual for Mizuo to decline, since she usually goes along with whatever they suggest. Masato looks on, slightly bewildered. She seemed flustered, a light sweat beading on her brow as Masato looked over, asking why she had been in such a rush. He continued asking if something was wrong. He told her it was fine if she didn't want to go, calling Mizuo an idiot for putting her in this position. Her expression suddenly brightened into a wide smile as she eagerly agreed to go. Internally, she made a resolution. She had a tell-in tomorrow. As they walked, her thoughts drifted. She didn't dislike Mizuo at all. In fact, she truly loved the time the three of them spent together. She pictured Mizuo's bright, joyful smile. Memory of a warm hug from her friend solidified the thought. She loved Mizuo dearly. Arriving at the batting center, the sight of the lanes filled her with a growing sense of excitement. Masato looked around with boyish glee, declaring that places like this were the best for feeling like a kid again. Watching him, Kumi smiled, wondering what kind of child he must have been. He laughed, adding that he was probably cool back then too. He then gestured for her to go first, admitting he wanted to show off. From behind him, she thought to herself that his intentions were obvious. Finding his confidence cute, she pointed to a cage mark for 130 km/h pitches. She challenged him, asking if he could really handle it. Masato grinned, boasting that it was no problem since he was a pretty good hitter. Apologizes and asks Kumi if she can hold his bag for him. She quietly agrees. For a moment, they both seem to wonder if this is really happening. As she takes the backpack, a warm blush spreads across her face. She realizes with a flutter of excitement that having him entrusted belongings to her feels just like something a girlfriend would do. Her happy thought is interrupted by Masato's enthusiastic cry as the first ball is pitched toward him. Standing behind him, Kumi thinks to herself that it's perfectly fine if they're not officially a couple yet. This moment is pure bliss. He focuses swinging with precision and making solid contact with a sharp crack of the bat. The ball smashes into the back netting, Kumi, clutching his bag, is completely amazed. She exclaims that he's truly incredible, just as she told him he would be. He doesn't turn. This expression is set with intense focus as he prepares for the next pitch. Watching him, Kumi is captivated. She thinks he looks truly cool, and a new idea strikes her. She should record this moment. She pulls out her phone and begins filming, calling out praise for how well he's hitting. He glances back, confidently stating that this level is a piece of cake for him, though he seems to wonder about the video she's taking. A determined, slightly mischievous glint appears in her eyes as she continues to record. She thinks to herself that if she posts this on social media, everyone will surely assume he's her boyfriend. After their session, Masato turns to her with a bright smile, remarking on how much fun he had. Kumi agrees, noting that while it had been a while for her, she hit quite well too, and adds that she was genuinely surprised by his skill. He then cheerfully asks if they should start filling in the outer mode, a saying for making progress in a relationship. He smiles warmly, asking if she understands his meaning. Kumi, caught completely off guard, feels her heart pound her chest. Flustered, she turns away and declares that it's her turn to bat next. She thinks to herself that he's moving too fast, and she needs to slow things down a bit. She quickly hands him her bag, telling him to hold it. With a decisive clink, she inserts a coin into the batting cage machine. From inside the cage, she looks back at him through the netting, vowing that she's about to prove herself. She grips the bat over her shoulder, a determined smile on her face as she tells him to watch her closely. It looks on, slightly taken aback but agreeing to her request. With a powerful swing, she connects perfectly, sending the ball flying. She turns back to him, a triumphant grin on her face. She asks if he saw, reminding him that she told him she'd show him something good. Masato is utterly stunned, exclaiming in disbelief. The sharp crack of the bat echoes as the ball speeds away. She thinks to herself that not a single ball will get past her. A moment later, however, her confidence evaporates. She realizes with a sinking feeling that she might have overdone it. She slumped over the table, mortified. She had gotten so carried away, completely forgetting that she was supposed to be making sure Masato had a good time. As she fretted over what he must think of her, he leaned in, a slight blush on his cheeks, asking what was wrong. He watched as she mumbled a non-committal reply and began to eat. Taking a bite of his own food, he then asked her directly if she was the athletic type. Quickly clarified, asking if athletic people were her type, or if she had a preference one way or the other. He went on to explain that he once got along well with a girl he used to exercise with, which made him think he might have a thing for athletic people. Kumi quietly echoed his words, got along well. He smiled, remarking that it all made sense now. He asked when she started playing softball, prompting a memory of her as a young elementary school student already a natural on the field. She confirmed she'd been playing for a long time, which explained her skill. As he waved and said he'd see her tomorrow, Kumi was lost in her own thoughts. She didn't dislike athletic people, and she wondered if it was okay to be happy about his comment. On the train ride home, she sat with a faint contemplative smile, replaying the day's events in her mind as the doors closed. Meanwhile, on his own train, Masato smiled to himself, thinking about what a fun day it had been. A sense of unease crept in, however. He found their current relationship so comfortable that he was terrified of doing anything that might ruin it. Her thoughts were interrupted by the chime of her phone. A new message had arrived. It was from Masato. She opened it to find a picture he had taken of her mid-swing at the batting cage beneath it. His message was simple. Thank for today. It was fun. She quietly acknowledges the depth of her feelings, a silent confession that she likes him a great deal, sitting on the train. A blush warms her cheeks as she clutches her phone. The thought solidifies into a certainty. If she could no longer be with Masato, she would surely break. Meanwhile, Mizuo walks alone, consumed by a different set of emotions. She reflects that lately, she has been acting strangely. She recalls Masato telling her with a bright smile that being with her makes him change. His cheerful words, however, only seem to deepen her troubled expression. Thoughts drift to the past, remembering that it was Kumi who introduced her to Masato, the person she considered her destiny. Because of this, she had placed her complete trust in Kumi. Now, as she walks through the city, she questions that past self, wondering if her heart was always so fickle. Lost in a crowd, her feelings tangle into a confusing knot. She wants to find her fated person, and her feelings for Masato haven't changed. But then, what is this other feeling she has for Kumi, a person she also likes? She's horrified by the realization. She absolutely must not fall for Kumi. If she were to become an obstacle, it would disrupt the bond Masato and Kumi have shared since university. The thought of becoming such a nuisance is something she truly despises. She tries to rationalize it, telling herself that Kumi isn't trying to tempt her in any way. But the logic brings no comfort. As she walks alone, dwarfed by the surrounding buildings, she comes to a painful conclusion about herself. She is a truly hateful person. She found herself wishing they could meet again. Though she knew it wouldn't be the same as before, the time and the day would be different. She knew that meeting by chance would be a miracle, yet the desire to see him again was overwhelming. She needed to confirm for herself who she truly liked. She couldn't escape the guilt that plagued her whenever the three of them were together. Her thoughts were cut short as she rounded a corner and saw a familiar figure just ahead. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if it could truly be him. Recognizing the uniform, she called out, "Excuse me," turned, a look of mild confusion on his face. Mizuho's hopeful expression fell as she realized her mistake. It was someone else entirely. She stammered, tried to explain herself. She noted that his uniform was the same as the person she was looking for, and nervously asked if a university student happened to work part-time in his establishment. He considered her question for a moment before confirming that, yes, they did have a university student on staff. A spark of hope returned to Mizuho's eyes as she pressed him for the person's name. He looked slightly uncomfortable, explaining that he couldn't give out personal information. Mizuho immediately realized her mistake, bowing her head in embarrassment and berating herself for asking such an inappropriate question. Her apology was so forceful that she bowed completely out of his line of sight, leaving the young waiter to stare down at her with a bewildered expression. As they part ways, Kumi hands Mizuho a black card. She suggests that if Mizuho is curious, she should go check it out, noting that it's a business card. Mizuho quietly accepts it with a word of thanks, then catches the eye of the waiter she had mistakenly approached earlier. He offers a charming wink and tells her he'll be waiting for her, calling her my lady. Mizuho freezes, surprised by his forwardness. Touching the card, she reflects on the encounter. Despite his words, her heart hadn't fluttered in the slightest. After all, she realized he was a complete stranger to her. Her eyes finally focus on the card itself. It reads Boys Bar Festa, with the name Yuta written on it. The realization hits her with a jolt. It's an invitation to Boys Bar. This new information changes everything. Though she briefly considers going, a quick search on her phone reveals a critical detail. The establishment requires all patrons to be 18 or older and present proof of age. Later that night, Mizuho lies in bed, trying to dismiss the waiter's actions as simple kindness. Common in a world with a male-to-female ratio is 1:5. Elsewhere, Kumi stretches out her own bed. Her thoughts, however, drift not to the boy from the bar, but to the one she was truly looking for. She pictures Masato's kind smile, which then shifts to the look of genuine concern he had shown her. She clings to that memory, unable to believe his kindness was anything but sincere. Across town, Kumi's phone shines with an incoming message. Kumi reads the text from Mizuho, who thanks her but says she didn't need to go to such lengths for her. A knowing smile spreads across Komi's face. Her friend had seen right through her attempt to help. A moment later, Mizuho's phone buzzes with Komi's reply. She reads the message, which says it's fine as long as she had fun. A soft, appreciative smile forms on Mizuho's lips. She sat on her bed, phone in hand, looking at a cheerful message from Kumi. Her friend had sent a photo of herself taken from behind, playfully asking if she looked cool. But the lightheartedness didn't reach Mizuho, who could only murmur a quiet question to herself. Why? The question hung in the air as a sharp pang of anguish struck her. Clutching the fabric of her shirt over her chest, she wondered why this feeling was so agonizing, why she always wanted to say something but never could, overwhelmed. She sat hunched on her bed as a single tear traced a path down her cheek. The question echoed in her mind unanswered. What? Her gaze then fell upon the black card Kumi had given her. Boys Bar Festa, a name Yuta, was written on it. A desperate thought formed. Perhaps this was the only way. Her fingers tightened into a fist, a silent vow to not hurt her best friend and to not hurt herself any longer. Exhausted by the emotional turmoil, she collapsed on her back, shielding her eyes from the light. The card lay beside her, a tangible symbol of the feelings she now had to confront. A new resolve hardened in her eyes. She would face this turmoil head-on. She would say goodbye to the pain,